Chapter 908. After saying so much his tongue was dry. The scholar hurriedly asked, "What's next?" The storyteller cursed his bad luck. "There's nothing else." The story had just reached the most fascinating part, but there was nothing else. No wonder the commoners were so angry. Nothing else. The commoner curled his lips. There was a hint of anger in his words. He raised his hand and pointed at the storyteller in the room. "Didn't you hear what that bastard old man said? The next chapter hasn't been written yet, but according to tradition Zhao Huang, that shameless villain, will not have a good ending." The scholar was furious when he heard this. He said angrily, "You're just a commoner. Who gave you the guts to talk about a scholar? Wasn't Zhao Huang his name?" The commoner in front of him said in front of him that he would not have a good ending. How could Zhao Huang take this lying down? Zhao Huang flew into a rage without warning. The commoner was shocked. After coming back to his senses, the commoner also became angry. He said, "That's the convention. Who dares to violate the rules of this industry? Unless the writer Xiantu layman doesn't want to stay in Wanzhou anymore." Wei Xi's purpose in supporting novelists was to control public opinion. As the initiator, he had the right to set perfect rules for the novel industry. In addition to the previous rules, Wei Xi also stipulated that the spirit of the novel must be positive. What was positive? The content of the story must not involve vulgar filth, and the main theme must be correct. The first rule was easy to understand, but the latter was complicated. Whether it was the protagonist or the supporting role, once involved, there must be no happy ending, including but not limited to repaying kindness with enmity, abandoning one's wife and children, favoring one's concubine and killing one's wife, marrying another, not distinguishing between legitimate and concubine, being unkind to parents, being filial to children, being disrespectful to elders, and being heartless to children. According to the severity of the plot, the characters would suffer different degrees of setbacks. Zhao Huang in the story had already violated several rules. According to the rules of the industry, Zhao Huang's ending would not be good. The commoners kept up with the updates for several days. Their dislike of Zhao Huang had reached its peak. As the plot developed, the tree demon and great scholar Lu were also in danger because of Zhao Huang's framing. They were having a good time listening to the novel. Next, the wicked would get fancy retribution, but there was nothing below. The real-life version of Zhao Huang was furious. What the hell was Xiantu layman? How dare he use his name to write such a lowly novel? It would have been fine if it was a coincidence that they shared the same name, but it was not. In the story, Zhao Huang clearly had a family, but he still lied and said that he was not married, tricking the pure and innocent tree demon into giving him his heart. In reality, Zhao Huang also had a family. When he heard that Wanzhou had the golden scale pavilion, he yearned for it very much. He left his old parents in the care of a child bride who was already married. Along the way, he used his talent to deceive an ignorant village girl, and after a one-night stand he ran away with her money. In the story, Zhao Huang was born into a family of bricklayers. He used his parents' hard-earned money to disguise himself as a second-generation rich kid, ignoring his crippled father and blind mother. In reality, Zhao Huang was born into a wealthy family in the countryside. His parents sold 6 of his sisters to support his education, and he pretended to be the son of a rich man in front of his friends. In the story, Zhao Huang borrowed the great scholar's book to have the opportunity to further his studies, but in the end he made a false accusation and wanted to kill the great scholar. In reality, Zhao Huang enjoyed the benefits of the Golden Scale Pavilion. After failing to conquer it, he slandered and insulted the governor of Lu province, trying to make a name for himself by stepping on him. With so many similarities, how could Zhao Huang not care? How was this a story? It was obviously a deliberate allusion to him, and even the name was copied. The common people did not know, but how could the scholars who spent their days in the Golden Scale Pavilion not know? No wonder these few days some scholars who got along with him avoided him. The crux of the problem was actually this. The common people were inexplicably bombarded by Zhao Huang. Before he could get angry, Zhao Huang had already flung his sleeves and left. Since the governor of Lu province used such a method to deal with him, don't blame him for being heartless. Jiang Pingji was really wronged. She was so busy, how could she have the time to care about 1 or 2 small shrimps? Zhao Huang shamelessly stayed in the Golden Scale Pavilion. In his opinion, being ostracized and treated coldly by a few scholars was nothing. It was naive and laughable that the governor of Lu province wanted to use such a method to deal with him. Did the matter end there? Of course not. Monk Xiangfeng was a pen holder in Wanzhou. He was best at writing all kinds of stories and he was quite famous in the streets. This time he did not write one story, but 6 short stories linked together to form a series. In addition to The Legend of Zhao Kuang, there were 5 other books. The male protagonist of each book was an ungrateful person. His actions were hateful and made people's teeth itch. After writing 2 short stories, the gossipy common people found the prototype of the male protagonist through clues. After understanding it in detail, they exploded in anger. Was their governor someone who could be insulted by just anyone? How could an ungrateful person have the face to stand on the land of Wanzhou? Was it reasonable to return evil for good? *CKoff. Why didn't he just soar to the sky on the monkey? Coincidentally, at this time the people who used return evil for good? How do you repay good? The test results for this topic were out. Zhao Kuang and the others wanted to cry but had no tears. They discovered that many scholars used their incident as an example. Their words were harsh and merciless. The situation continued to worsen. The landlord of the folk house. A small temple cannot accommodate a great Buddha. I don't want the rent for 10 days. Let's go, let's go. The waiter of the tea house. We are all serious businessmen. We only do business as human beings, not animals. Don't block the way. The manager of the restaurant. I'm sorry, sir. There's a sign in front of the door. Our land is barren and unruly, full of wicked people. 2 strong men with thick arms and wooden mallets stood at the door. 2 pairs of tiger eyes stared at them fiercely, like wild beasts looking for food. Not to mention the tea house, the wine shop, the street vendors, even the brothel which welcomed everyone did not entertain them. One of them was particularly unlucky. One night he went to the brothel to seek pleasure. The next day he woke up to find that his buttocks were in pain. There were even streaks of blood hanging from them. Not only did he fail to pluck flowers for pleasure, his chrysanthemum was stolen by some bastard. They underestimated the respect and love the people of Wanzhou had for Jiang Pingji and the influence of public opinion. Seeing their reputation destroyed, they could only flee with their tails between their legs in the end. Although they left, their story continued to spread in Wanzhou. It was even exported to Chongzhou County and other places. 2 months later, Jiang Pingji happened to find out about it. She was almost amused by Su Ke's actions. Jiang Pingji said to Fengzhen, Xiaoyu, you don't have to be so angry. They're just a few scholars who don't know how to appreciate favors. They insulted me. Just chase them out of the Jinling Pavilion and blacklist them forever. Why do you have to go through all this trouble? Chapter 909. Although he said he was making a mountain out of a molehill, he was very happy in his heart. Jiang Pingji said, according to what you said, none of the scholars who entered the Jinling Pavilion dared to scold me? Humans have a face and trees have a bark. Not everyone is as shameless as those people, Fengzhen said with a sinister smile. The scholars of the world have received favors from our Lord, so it's naturally inconvenient for them to reprimand you. As long as you don't do anything that infuriates the heavens and the people, your reputation should be fine. She established the Jinling Pavilion and gave favors to the scholars in the world. As long as the scholars still had some dignity, they would not easily fall out with Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji pinched her chin. She felt that Fengzhen's words made sense. Since I'm doing you a favor, I'll do it to the end. Fengzhen was surprised. What idea did my lord come up with this time? Jiang Pingji took out a booklet from her sleeve. Fengzhen took it and looked at it. The 4 words, De Xia's rhyming book, were written neatly on the cover. Fengzhen smiled bitterly after reading it. I'm already in my 30s. Why would I still need to read De Xia Yun? Keep it for yourself, my lord. The so-called De Xia rhyme book was basically the ancient version of Pinyin, similar to the Qiyun and Guangyun that the livestream viewers were familiar with. The creator of Great Xia rhyme was Prime Minister Huangfu of the previous dynasty. The phonetic transcription of the Great Xia rhyming book was divided into 2 types, straight phonetic and reverse cut. Straight phonetic was to use homophones to transcribe the phonetic of a word, while reverse cut was to use 2 commonly used words to transcribe the phonetic of a word. For example, the direct pronunciation of Kong is the transcription of Kong, and the reverse is Ku and Ong. Thanks to this book of rhymes of the Great Xia dynasty. After the Great Xia dynasty split up, the official language of the 5 countries became the same. Otherwise, there would be different dialects in the world and it would be impossible for them to communicate properly. Children had to memorize the initial consonants and final consonants in the Xia rhyming book for the sake of learning in the future. However, the scarier part was that there were 49 initial consonants and 181 final consonants in Xia rhyming book. Before Meng Tong's enlightenment, he had to memorize 230 common words. In layman's terms, before teaching a person how to read, the person must have a certain level of literacy. He had to memorize 230 commonly used words in Great Xia rhyming book before he could use these words to mark the pronunciations of other words. Children's enlightenment was slow, and it was difficult for the common people to develop their wisdom. The difficulty of phonetic transcription was also a huge obstacle. Jiang Pingji said, "You'll know once you open it." Fengzhen was suspicious. He lifted his hand and opened the book. He discovered that the title page also had the words, Xia Dynasty's Rhyming Book written on it. There were also strange symbols beside each word. He was puzzled and raised his head to look at Jiang Pingji's face. He realized that she was looking at him with a face full of expectation. Fengzhen suppressed his emotions and flipped through a few more pages. It was filled with familiar words, but there were tiny symbols around each word. He was puzzled. Could it be that the secret lied in these symbols? Fengzhen thought about it and began to carefully search for the similarities between these symbols. Indeed, he really did find some patterns. The more he searched, the more frightened Fengzhen became. It was rare for Longzi to put his heart and soul into something, and the audience in the live broadcast room was also writing at a great speed. They all knew that Jiang Pingji came from the interstellar world of the future, but she had never spoken a word of her hometown. She didn't even write the word hometown. How could he miss out on such a rare opportunity? This was a good opportunity to study the language of the future. Jiang Pingji saw that Fengzhen had followed suit and drawn the symbols. She smiled and squinted her eyes. She knew that he had figured out the trick. She said, "A few days ago, you told me that Feng Yi complained that Meng Tong of the Golden Scale Academy was tormented by the Xia dynasty's rhyming book?" Fengzhen vaguely guessed something. He secretly clenched his fists and suppressed the surging emotions in his heart. "It's true. So I went back and found a copy of the Xia dynasty's rhyming book. After studying it carefully, I discovered a big secret." Jiang Pingji smiled and squinted her eyes. She suddenly asked an irrelevant question. "You also know about the symbols that Mr. Qing researched, right?" Fengzhen said, "Of course I know." Because of the symbols, the celebrities gathered in Wanzhou were in a heated argument. Everyone had their own opinions on the matter of the symbols. The scene was like charabah. Jiang Pingji said, "I was inspired by this. I was thinking, can I also use different symbols to represent different pronunciations?" In her world there was such a thing as pinyin. The symbols used were completely different from what the audience in the live broadcast room knew. Jiang Pingji didn't use the symbols given by the audience. Instead, she chose the interstellar language that she was familiar with. The Xia dynasty's rhyming book is indeed good, but the threshold is too high. The mechanism is also complicated. It's extremely difficult for ordinary people to get started. If we use these symbols to mark the pronunciations, it'll be much easier. Children only need to remember a few dozen symbols to be able to practice pinyin. Fengzhen had a guess in his heart, but when he got Jiang Pingji's confirmation, he still couldn't believe his ears. The obviously complicated Xia dynasty's rhyming book could be simplified to this extent? Really? Any word can be spelled out. Won't you know if you try? Fengzhen didn't believe it. He randomly took out 2 books, picked a few dozen words and compared them with the symbols he'd sorted out. After testing it out, it was indeed correct. He blinked his eyes in disbelief. If this simple method of phonetic transcription could be popularized on a large scale, it would save a lot of time and energy. It would also lower the threshold for people to study and give more people from poor families the hope of studying. "I plan to personally go back to Wanzhou," Jiang Pingji said to Fengzhen. Jiang Pingji said to Fengzhen, "This brand new rhyming book will be tested in the Jinlin Academy for now to see how it works. If there are no problems, I plan to popularize these phonetic symbols in my own territory." Fengzhen spent a lot of effort to force himself to calm down. "My lord," Jiang Pingji said, It's a long road to enlighten the people. The people can't read a word, but if they put their minds to it, they can memorize it in less than 3 days. When the time comes, the government will issue an order. One will be written in normal words and the other will be marked with symbols. The people can use the phonetic symbols they've memorized to spell out the words one by one. Think about it, if that's the case, how much effort can the government save? The low literacy rate of the people indirectly affected the efficiency of the government's issuing of government orders. Because they couldn't read, they didn't know what the government had issued. Their eyes were blank and they couldn't understand anything. If they could spell out the words themselves, they would know what was written on the notice. Even if they couldn't read the words, they could read them out. Fengzhen felt his mouth go dry. He stared at his lord blankly. He didn't look like he was looking at his lord, but like he was looking at a god. Seeing that Fengzhen didn't respond, Jiang Pingji threw the rhyming book of Dixia and said angrily, "Do you agree or not?" Fengzhen was stunned. How could he not agree to such a good thing? Besides, the Lord was the Lord. She was the one who made the decisions. Why was she asking him? Fengzhen said, "Everything is up to you, my lord. I'm willing to be at your beck and call, even if I have to die 1,000 times. Jiang Pingji said, "All right, let's agree. The affairs of Wanzhou are all in your hands." Fengzhen heard clearly what Jiang Pingji said and broke out in a cold sweat. Jiang Pingji said, "Didn't I say before that I want to go back to Wanzhou? I asked you if you agreed. You said that I would make the decision." Fengzhen looked at the government office filled with bamboo slips in a daze, then looked at his lord who was smiling brightly. "My life is over." Chapter 9-10. Fengzisher, that's your lord, not your daughter. Don't be coaxed by her sweet words and forget everything, okay? Qiguan Rang had returned from his patrol and found that his lord had disappeared without a trace. He was furious. Fengzhen felt wrong too. How would he know that his lord was so treacherous? His lord disappeared without a trace. His heart was tired. Qiguan Rang let out a long sigh. Fortunately, the aristocratic families in Chongzhou are holding each other back and can't recover for the time being. There's no need to worry even if my lord isn't here. If Chongzhou really needed Jiang Pingji according to his lord's personality, she wouldn't leave the mess behind and leave. Now, forget it, let her be. Other than compromise, Qiguan Rang couldn't think of a second choice. Fengzhen sneered. "Wenjing, you're talking about me. Aren't you the same?" After saying that, Fengzhen sighed in his heart and thought, it wasn't that they were being played by their lord. It was clear that they spoiled their lord too much and deliberately let her have her way. The two of them didn't know that their lord, who said she wanted to return to Wanzhou, had taken a small detour on her way back and turned to another place. It was the height of summer and the sun was shining brightly. Under the command of Wei Ci and the others, the main roads in Shangjing had been completed. The buildings in the city were also planned. "Zixiao, eat some watermelon. This watermelon has been soaked in a well and is very cold. Eat some to relieve the heat so that you won't faint from the heat." Zhang Ping played the role of a nanny dutifully. He couldn't wait to serve Wei Ci, the porcelain beauty. Wei Ci looked up at the sound and took a plate of watermelon from Zhang Ping. The skin was peeled off and the flesh was cut into evenly sized pieces. It was placed on the plate. It was bright red and looked very appetizing. Wei Ci laughed. "How can I be so weak? You, on the other hand, are paying less and less attention to your appearance. Look at Zhang Ping's attire. He was dressed in coarse linen clothes and his long hair was wrapped in a cloth. He also had a wet face cloth on his head to block the sun. Why else would they say that Zixiao is an immortal who descended from the heavens and we are mere mortals made of mud?" Xiao Guang was panting heavily. His clothes were drenched in sweat again and again. The skin that was exposed was tanned to a dark brown color. He laughed and teased Wei Ci. "Zixiao, look at Shiheng and then look at Guang, one is darker than the other. On the other hand, your skin is still as white as snow. I am very jealous when I see it." Xiao Guang had only joined Wanzhou later, but he, Wei Ci, and Zhang Ping had lived and eaten together at the construction site in Shangjing for a year, so they naturally had a deep bond. Wei Ci smiled. His skin glowed faintly under the sunlight. He was as pure as a celestial being. What's there to be jealous of? In Ci's opinion, he's at a great disadvantage. Wei Ci joked. "I spend a lot of time under the scorching sun every day but my skin never gets tanned. Those who don't know what's going on might think that I'm slacking off and trying to fish in troubled waters. Wei Ci and Xiao Guang were chatting and laughing when the messenger rushed over in a hurry. Wei Ci furrowed his brows. What happened? The messenger replied, reporting to the three sirs, the Lord is outside the camp. What? The three of them widened their eyes in astonishment. Wei Ci, who had not sweated before, could not help but break out in fine hot sweat on his forehead. Quickly go and welcome the Lord. Jiang Pingji's arrival was too sudden. The three of them had not received any news at all. After a flurry of activity, Wei Ci and the others finally saw Jiang Pingji. They bowed respectfully. Greetings, my lord. No need to be so polite. I was just about to rush back to Wanzhou from Chongzhou, so I stopped by to see you. Jiang Pingji dismounted from the horse and took off the bamboo hat on her head to block the sun. She stood in front of the three of them and let out a long sigh. Zixiao has tanned. Shiheng and Chongming have also lost a lot of weight. Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang were speechless. It's not hard at all. It's my duty to share the Lord's worries and burdens. The three of them bowed again, but they could not help but complain in their hearts. They said that Wei Ci had tanned. Are you sure there's nothing wrong with his eyes, my lord? Jiang Pingji had rushed back to Wanzhou for important matters. She made a small detour to Shangjing, so she did not stay for long. The night was cool. Jiang Pingji went to Wei Ci's door and knocked lightly. My lord? Wei Ci was dressed in pajamas and had a light cloak draped over his shoulders. What brings you here so late at night? Jiang Pingji entered in a flash and said with a smile, Zixiao, did you receive the letter I sent you? Wei Ci's hand trembled and his heart skipped a beat. He had the urge to break into a run and run out of the house. I received it. His heart was flustered and his mind was in a mess. His cheeks were flushed. It's good that you received it. Jiang Pingji sat down as if there was no one else around. She smiled and asked him, Zixiao, do you have anything to say to me? It was dark in the house. Wei Ci could barely see the outline of a ball. He did not say a word and prepared to light the lamp. Zixiao, come here. There's no need to light the lamp. Wei Ci could only retract his foot that had taken half a step and turned to sit near her. As soon as he sat down, his right hand was held by a warm and slender hand. The heat seemed to rush through his skin straight to his heart. Zixiao, I missed you. Jiang Pingji repeated the contents of the previous letter and asked again. Don't you have anything to say to me? It was too dark in the house. Wei Ci struggled to open his eyes wide as if he wanted to see her expression clearly. After a while his lips moved and he spat out a few words. My lord, why do you have to do this? He gave up the idea of withdrawing his hand. Competing with the person in front of him with strength was simply asking for trouble. Jiang Pingji said with a smile, Zixiao, why do you have to do this? There's nothing wrong with being honest. Wei Ci was about to speak when a figure rushed into his arms. Before he could react, he had already been pushed onto the mat. At this moment his heartbeat showed signs of breaking through the limit. Don't move. Let me lean on you. Her voice was a little weak. He rarely heard it. Even during the most dangerous times in his previous life, Her Majesty was so stubborn that she refused to give in. Those who provoked her would be killed. Those who blocked her would be slaughtered. Wei Ci was in a daze. Two arms wrapped around his neck. He was so scared that he did not dare to move. How did this look like weakness? Suddenly, four words popped up in his mind, showing weakness to the enemy. After a while, Wei Ci listened to the person on top of him speak. I have a frog that I really like. Unfortunately, I can't bear to put a lid on it. I'll keep it for the time being. Wei Ci was dumbfounded. After a while, Jiang Pingji still had no intention of getting up. My lord, this is improper. Jiang Pingji said, What are you worried about, Zixiao? Wei Ci fell into silence. He said, My lord is a smart person. How can you not understand? No matter what, he just didn't want to become a stain and weakness for her again. The experience of his previous life was just a dream. Jiang Pingji was a little sullen. At the end of the day, Zixiao just doesn't believe me. She simply got up. Wei Ci felt empty instead. My lord, what did you call me? Wei Ci choked. Jiang Pingji burst into laughter. He did not want to really scare Wei Ci. If I had a female name, what do you think I should be called? Wei Ci was speechless. He was not scared, but he was scared silly. He was sure that his disguise had been exposed by his lord. Zixiao, trust me this once. Wei Xi was flustered. That Jiang Pingji can't protect you, but I will never make the same mistake. She thought about it and felt that it was better to put a lid on the frog and suffocate it. Chapter 9:11. My lord, Wei Xi was supposed to be conflicted and in pain, but he had to admit that at that moment his heart was jumping with joy. Do you believe me? Jiang Pingji raised her hand to pinch his chin, straightened his face and looked him in the eye. Wei Xi laughed bitterly and said, My lord, you still don't understand. Other than you, there is no one else in the world who can make me believe so. Jiang Pingji was startled. It was her turn to jump with joy. However, Wei Xi was an ostrich. How could he let her be happy? He immediately added, Because of this, can I ask you for a favor? Jiang Pingji said without thinking, I refuse. Wei Xi was forced into a corner by her. My lord, why don't you listen to what it is? When it comes out of your mouth, pleasant words can make me jump for joy and unpleasant words can make me feel annoyed and depressed. It's a 50-50 ratio. You said something that made me jump with joy just now and the next sentence will definitely not be good. Rather than listening to it, it's better not to listen. Wei Xi was convinced. When was Her Majesty so willful in her previous life? Wei Xi said, I have to say it even if you don't want to listen. My lord, do you know what I want? Jiang Pingji said, Your mind is too sensitive and deep. I dare not guarantee that I know everything, but I am sure that I can give you what you want. Wei Xi's face was bitter. He said, I want the world to be peaceful. You can indeed give it to me. In the depths of his heart there was a small voice saying, But why did he want the person in front of him? This was probably the most daring idea Wei Xi had ever had in his life. As long as he still had a trace of rationality, he would not let this terrible idea have a chance to see the light of day again. Jiang Pingji asked with a smile, The world to be peaceful and the people to live and work in peace? This has always been what you want to achieve and it is what I hope to achieve. However, other than these, do you have no other selfish motives? For example, do you want the person in front of you? Who cares? I'll cook this frog and eat it first. Jump all you want. If you have the guts, try jumping again. After hearing this, Wei Xi felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His whole body stiffened and he did not dare to move. It wasn't just that the other party had exposed his most obscure and filthy thoughts, but also, Wei Xi realized that something was wrong and subconsciously held Jiang Pingji's right hand with both of his hands. This person was supporting himself with his left hand while his right hand reached for the belt around his waist. Unexpectedly, the other party didn't use much strength and he easily stopped her. Wei Xi spoke abruptly. Not now. As soon as he said it, he regretted it and wanted to bite off his tongue. A direct rejection was better than these 5 words. Not now. When would that be? He could have rejected her decisively, but now he was left with a blank space that made one's imagination roam. After hearing that, Jiang Pingji's mood suddenly improved. She smiled and leaned close to Wei Xi's neck to whisper. Forget it. It's rare for Zixiao to take the initiative, so I'm satisfied. She grabbed his left hand with her right hand and lay down beside him. Wei Xi swallowed nervously. His Adam's apple squirmed a few times. He tried to struggle a little, but the other party refused to let go of his hand. Master, you can't sleep here. If others were to find out, even if the 2 of them were innocent, they would not be able to extricate themselves. Those who are innocent will be innocent. Those who are impure will be impure. I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? Jiang Pingji opened her eyes and said inexplicably, I'll wait for you for another 10 years at most. Wei Xi was startled and seemed to understand something. He said sadly, Master, you don't have to wait. Now. Jiang Pingji tilted her head. With a teasing look in her eyes, she added, Are you sure I don't have to wait? You were resisting in all kinds of ways just now, but now you can't wait anymore. What I want to say is, after 10 years, if you still have a reluctant attitude, I really can't help but eat you up. Do you know what kind of eating it is, Zixiao? Wei Xi was speechless. When it came to acting like a hooligan, even if there were 10 of him, he might not be a match for Jiang Pingji. Why is my lord so obsessed with me? Wei Xi could not help but ask a narcissistic question. Was it because he was good-looking? Jiang Pingji said, Zixiao just said that there is no one else in the world who can make you believe in me so much. Then I also want to say that there is no one else in the world who can make me feel so compatible with you. I have very high requirements. I either don't want anyone or I want the best and most suitable person. I think you are that person. The room was pitch black and the surroundings were quiet. Wuxia had never been so excited before. His heart seemed to want to jump out of his throat. He was an adult in both his previous and current lives, but now he felt the nervousness of a young man who had his first awakening of love. All these emotions kept him together. The knot in his heart that had perplexed him in his previous life was solved with Jiang Pingji's words. What the hell? My lord, you should prioritize the great cause. When my lord reaches the end, you may realize that Wuxia is just an ordinary man. Wuxia's voice was a little perturbed. Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. Wuxia must be doing this on purpose. He could not see her happy, so he always said things that made her annoyed and angry. If my lord still doesn't change your mind by then, he will let you be. After he finished speaking, Wuxia lay straight on the ground like a dead fish. His ears were so red that they could drip blood. If there was a crack on the ground, he really wanted to crawl into it and hide. Jiang Pingji had a look of disbelief. Did she just trigger a hidden plot? But before that, my lord, you should still be careful between men and women. Wuxia's last sentence dampened her spirits. She pouted and did not care what Wuxia said. After today she did not know when they would meet again. Was she not allowed to see more? After a while Wuxia asked her softly, My lord, do you have any plans for the next 2 years? After a while Wuxia asked her softly, My lord, do you have any plans for the next 2 years? I'm afraid that after 2 years, the situation will change drastically. There were too many changes in the past and present lives, but Wuxia knew the capabilities of the feudal lords. His lord's recuperation for 2 years meant that she could not intervene in the war. She could only stay in the north, which gave the feudal lords a chance to develop their power. He said, The Su brothers come from famous families and are all ambitious. Zhou County has abundant provisions and has a geographical advantage. They can rely on this place to gather talents and have a bright future. Yangzhen's son Yang Tao. He alone is not a threat, but Yan Lin by his side is not easy to deal with. With Yan Lin's assistance, Yang Tao may be able to take over the false emperor's foundation. His future is limitless. And that Huang Song, my lord, you are brothers with him, but... Before Wuxia could finish, Jiang Pingji sneered and said, Sharpening the knife will not delay the work of cutting firewood. What are we afraid of? After we take care of the northern borderline, we'll deal with them later. Not to mention 2 years, even if it's 20 years, we'll still beat them until they cry for their parents. Jiang Pingji's power was concentrated in the north, and the surrounding areas were all difficult to deal with. After she took care of the northern borderline, it would be a critical moment when her vitality was greatly weakened. It was very likely that a few of her neighbors would join forces to target her. But would she be afraid of that? Chapter 9:12. Let's not talk about these disappointing things and don't think about changing the topic. Jiang Pingji yawned tiredly. She turned around and hugged Wuxia as a large pillow to sleep. Wuxia stiffened at first and the muscles all over his body tightened. After a while he asked, Is the Lord asleep? He had lived with Jiang Pingji for half of his life, so he knew how bad her sleep was. Even if someone tiptoed beside her, it would wake her up, let alone a slightly loud noise. Jiang Pingji closed her eyes and muttered, I'm already asleep. Do you have the heart to disturb my sweet dreams? Yes. The Lord is asleep. Wuxia smiled bitterly. The floor is cold. Forgive me for offending you. Let me carry you to the bed. The floor was made of solid wood. Not only was it hard, but it was also cold. It was not comfortable to lie on. Jiang Pingji's ears perked up when she heard that. She opened her arms enthusiastically. Come on. Zixiao can't carry you, I can carry you. Wuxia said, Since the Lord is asleep, don't talk in your sleep. Jiang Pingji pouted. She doubted whether Wuxia could carry her. Although she was slender, she was tall and muscular. Her actual weight was heavier than that of an ordinary adult man. Jiang Pingji did not have much hope that Wuxia would be able to carry her. It turned out that she had underestimated him. Wuxia heard Jiang Pingji laugh softly. As intelligent as he was, he naturally knew what she was laughing at. He could not help but blush. Although he had carried Jiang Pingji, it was actually quite strenuous for him. His breathing was a little breathless. It was only a few steps from where he stood to the bed, but Wuxia was so tired that a thin layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. Zixiao's arm strength still needs to be trained. Jiang Pingji rolled into the bed and clamped a corner of the thin blanket with her toes. She casually flung it and rolled her body in a circle. The spread-out thin blanket covered half of her body. Otherwise, it's easy to run out of stamina in the future. In the darkness, Wei Xi's eyes carried some helplessness. He was not a virgin. Of course, he could understand the meaning behind her words. Knowing Jiang Pingji's temperament, Wei Xi did not dare to simply respond to her, in case she pushed her luck. Jiang Pingji accurately stopped Wei Xi from taking another thin blanket and teased him with a smile. Sleep in the same bed. Summer's Zixiao is very likable. Wei Xi replied, in that case my lord disdains me during winter. No, Jiang Pingji said, my lord in winter is very likable to Zixiao. Wei Xi was stunned for a while before he understood what she meant. He was so embarrassed that he could not speak. His heart was burning with anger and his tone carried a hint of annoyance. Who likes it? In the previous life Her Majesty was so cold and serious. Why was she so glib in this life? He carefully lay down on the edge of the bed. His neck suddenly tightened and Jiang Pingji forcefully pulled him in. Wei Xi had no choice but to accept his fate. In the end he could not escape the fate of being used as a pillow in summer. In the previous life Her Majesty at least knew how to restrain herself, but in this life she was becoming more and more lawless. I like it, Jiang Pingji said. Wei Xi had no choice but to lie flat. Forget it, how many times can I be harassed in a year? Today I'll let her be. Wei Xi's guess was right. Jiang Pingji came here secretly and could only stay for 2 or 3 days. On the second day she ran away without a trace. She either brought Xiao Guang or Zhang Ping with her. They stared at the scorching sun and carefully inspected the construction progress everywhere. Other than at night they could not see her at all. After 3 days it was time for Jiang Pingji to set off for Wanzhou. People often say that what you think about in the day you dream about at night. Zixiao, you have to think about me more. This is an order. Jiang Pingji whispered in his ear. Wei Xi did not know if it was because the sun was too bright outside or because he was too nervous, but he felt his whole body breaking out in hot sweat. I have to share my lord's worries and burdens. I have no time to think too much. Jiang Pingji was exasperated, but due to the presence of others she could not do much. Just you wait, don't cry when the time comes. Wei Xi was fearless. At least for the next 10 years he would be safe. Farewell, my lord. He bowed with his hands clasped in front of him. Jiang Pingji was so angry that she laughed. She said to Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang, Shiheng Chongming, I forgot to tell Zixiao something. Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang thought that the two of them were going to talk business, so they tactfully retreated. Jiang Pingji grinned, revealing a few white teeth. Wei Xi's heart sank. He had a bad premonition. After sending Jiang Pingji away, Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang realized that Wei Xi's mood was a little off. They thought that the business Jiang Pingji and Wei Xi were going to discuss was very serious, so they were a little worried. In fact, Wei Xi had not recovered from his shock. The skin on his collarbone rubbed against his clothes, causing a slight and dense pain. It's nothing. Wei Xi comforted the two of them with a normal expression. On the other side, Jiang Pingji, who was already on her way, had a licorice in her mouth. The bullet screen of the live stream was already exploding. Xianxia, streamer, you didn't keep your word. Didn't you say that this live stream is very serious? Why did you steal my idol? Guju Daijun, I'm so angry. It's rare to have a male idol that I fell in love with at first sight, but in the end he was bitten by the streamer. Ishi la Wuxia Haitang. My heart is broken. Didn't they say that the streamer is very serious and won't make fun of him? The above were the wails of the audience in the blue bullet screen. Although the Red Army had an absolute advantage, the endless stream of handsome male idols still attracted a portion of the blue audience. Among the many male idols, Wei Xi's looks were the most outstanding. Because he had appeared on the live stream a few times, he was the most valuable. Jiang Pingji had boldly grabbed Wei Xi's collar and bit his collarbone. This action broke the hearts of the blue audience. What was even more heartbreaking was that they did not know if Jiang Pingji did it on purpose. Not only did she grab Wei Xi's collar, but she also blocked their view. She definitely did it on purpose, right? Compared to the wails of the blue audience, The red audience was laughing and making noise. Lao Siji Lianming. Hey hey hey, our little pig finally knows how to kiss cabbages. Father is so happy. Tudu Feichio, it's not easy. I've been following the live stream for almost 7 years. My daughter's first kiss has finally been given out. Mo Lingyin, Ba, what kind of first kiss is this? I've been looking forward to the streamer cooking this frog beauty ci. The streamer hesitated and refused to bite him. May I ask, who would boil hot water for several years? If you want to bite him, then bite him. What kind of hero is blocking the camera? They only saw Jiang Pingji take a bite of Wei Ci, but they did not see any extra skin on him. How infuriating. Iji Sabao, you don't understand. This is called possessiveness. If I had a boyfriend like Beauty Ci, I would be petty too. Mingshi Yaya. If I had a boyfriend like Beauty Ci, I would have knocked him out and dragged him to bed to make him cry. Jiang Pingji looked at the bullet screen and smiled without saying a word. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. That's true. No matter what, your lord is an old customer who roams the brothels. When it came to bickering, Suku was no match for Jiang Pingji. Why did my lord suddenly think of this? Jiang Pingji said, can't you be considerate to your subordinates? The truth was that Hui Jun had been pregnant for 10 months and gave birth to a son and a daughter. She counted the next generation of the members of the team with her fingers. Before he went to Chongzhou to take office, Shang Guanwan was pregnant. Qiguan Rang had a daughter. Feng Jin yearned for a second child. Feng Zhen's Fengyi seemed to have a genetic mutation. Yang Sai Fenglia did not want to get married. Xiao Guang already had a family. Zhang Ping was an unmarried member of the Keting clan. Meng Hun had no intention of remarrying. Jiang Nongqin wholeheartedly cared for Jiang Pingji and did not consider marriage. When she counted to Suku, she suddenly thought of the young couple who lived in different places. She had already found out who the mastermind was. There was no point in keeping Takshu. In order not to fall out with the mastermind, Jiang Pingji did not plan to do anything to Takshu at the moment. She planned to find an excuse to send Takshu away from her. After Suku heard this, he secretly rolled his eyes. Who would believe this reason? Right, I came back this time for the Golden Scale book. Suku raised his eyebrows. Golden Scale Academy? What's wrong with it? Jiang Pingji said, a while ago Fengzhen's son wrote a letter to his father complaining about the Xia Yun Shu. Suku laughed. Fengyi is extremely talented, intelligent and eager to learn. Master Qing and Master Yuanjing praised him. He started learning early, so the Xia Yun Shu should be nothing to him. Why did my lord rush back from so far away for this? Fengyi is fine, but the other children do not have a foundation, so they are stumbling in their studies. Even with the guidance of a famous teacher, their learning progress is still slow. The phonetic transcription of the Xia Yun Shu, regardless of whether it was direct or indirect, required the learner to have a certain literacy foundation. Apart from Fengyi, the other students of the Golden Scale Academy were all orphans of martyrs who had died in battle. Even martyrs were illiterate, let alone their children. Literacy is difficult, so is reading. My lord is kind enough to provide them with learning conditions for free. This is already a blessing to our ancestors. Suku sighed. Every student goes through this. If they do not learn well, they can only blame themselves for not working hard enough. They could only learn by rote. If they could not, it could only be said that the students did not work hard enough. That may not be the case, Jiang Pingji said. Xiao, you invite the teachers here. I have something to discuss with them. Although he did not know what it was, Suku did not dare to delay and quickly did as he was told. During the time that Jiang Pingji was not around, the teaching material compilation team expanded again. Apart from the 3 big names Qing, Yuanjing and Feng Ren, there were 4 knowledgeable scholars. It was worth mentioning that these 4 people were fans of Yuanjing and Feng Ren. In order to chase after their stars, they came all the way to Wanzhou. Now they were preparing to buy a house and settle down there. For fans, there was nothing happier than working hard with their idols. The peaceful and prosperous atmosphere of Wanzhou was also one of the factors that attracted them. Feng Ren was only an external aide, so the way he addressed Jiang Pingji was very formal. May I know why Magistrate Liuzhou has summoned us? Qing and Yuanjing were also suspicious. Didn't Jiang Pingji go to Chongzhou? Why did she suddenly come back? Of course it's an important matter. She took out the brand new Xia Yun Shu, that she had organized and handed it to them. The few people present were all big shots. Jiang Pingji did not need to waste time explaining. This is phonetic transcription? Master Yuanjing's hand trembled. He almost dropped the precious De Xia Yun Shu on the ground. The other two people were ready to take it. The three of them looked very funny. Yes. Don't be fooled by their strange appearance. If they are used for phonetic transcription, it is much simpler than the current straight transcription or reverse transcription, Jiang Pingji said. The biggest advantage is that, first, they are few in number and easy to remember. Second, children who are enlightened don't need to memorize hundreds of words before learning new words. Greatly reduces time and energy. The efficiency of enlightenment will naturally increase. De Xia Yun Shu was considered a pioneering work in this era, but for Jiang Pingji it was too complicated and prone to mistakes. Chapter 9:14. Master Yuanjing was an expert in the field of education. How could he not see the infinite potential hidden behind the De Xia rhyming book? It was a terrifying beast. No one knew if it would promote the development of the whole civilization or devour all of them. Lanting, tell me how to pronounce these rhymes. Master Yuanjing already had a plan in mind, but he still couldn't believe it. He had to hear Jiang Pingji pronounce it with his own ears. After all, a few words alone could not prove anything. He needed more powerful evidence. Obviously, the De Xia rhyming book that Jiang Pingji gave him was much simpler than the original direct pronunciation or reverse transcription. It was so simple that it was shocking. If the pronunciation of all the words could be spelled out with just a few rhymes, wouldn't it mean that everyone in the world had the possibility of learning? Just thinking about that scene made Yuanjing feel that his chest, which had been silent for a long time, began to heat up and his blood began to boil. Jiang Pingji didn't deliberately keep them in suspense. Instead, she taught them everything she knew. She taught them for 4 hours. It wasn't that Master Yuanjing and the others didn't have the ability to learn. They learned while learning and it turned into another seminar. When they learned all the pinyin method that Jiang Pingji taught them, they came up with a brand new enlightenment plan. With the more convenient and efficient pinyin transcription, of course, they had to give up the complicated De Xia rhyming book. These scribbles look weird, but it's very easy to learn. Feng Ren laughed and said, if only I was born a few decades later. In order to learn the De Xia rhyming book, I memorized it day and night. It was very hard. Jiang Pingji said, that won't do. If Master Feng was born a few decades later, who would I find to be a good right-hand man like Huayu? It's not too late now. Chongqing will enter school in 2 years. Chongqing will suffer for you what you didn't enjoy. Feng Ren laughed. He was amused by Jiang Pingji's thoughtful and playful words. He thought of his chubby granddaughter and his heart softened. He said, that last Chongqing looks like a lively and active person. With the brand new method of transcription, it'll be easy for her to learn. Otherwise, that lass would definitely get impatient from studying and quit. As a noble daughter of the Feng clan, if she didn't know how to read, wouldn't it be shameful? Governor Lu's initiative has indeed helped us a lot. Master Yuanjing seemed to be deep in thought. Governor Lu, are you planning to popularize this pinyin annotation method? Or is it just a trial in the Golden Scale Academy? He could imagine how many people would be able to read if the pinyin annotation could really be popularized. If this situation continued for 3 to 5 generations, what would the situation be like then? It would no longer be a fantasy to break the monopoly of the landowning households. That would be incredible. I spent so much effort to come up with the pinyin annotation for the sake of the children who have difficulty in enlightenment. To others it might be a rare treasure, but to me it might not be the case. I won't keep it to myself. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, currently I want to try it out in the Golden Scale Academy for a period of time. During this period of time, I'll have to trouble you to completely perfect it. In another half a year the children's foundations would be solid. At that time I plan to open the Golden Scale Pavilion and allow students to borrow some basic books from the Golden Scale Pavilion. Ching was surprised and said, but the Golden Scale Pavilion? Most of the people who were qualified to enter the Golden Scale Pavilion were adult men. How could a group of children sneak in? Halfway through his sentence he suddenly understood something. The worry on his face turned into joy. If a group of children sneaked in, the adult scholars would naturally be curious and ask questions. When the time came, the children would show their skills. They would definitely be able to scare people. The Lord wanted to make use of the scholars' mouths to advertise for the Golden Scale Academy for free. As long as outsiders saw results from this group of children, there would be much less resistance to popularizing the pinyin annotation. Jiang Pingji smiled and said nothing. Master Yuanjing asked, "What name have you thought of?" Jiang Pingji cast a suspicious look at him. "What name? You came up with this pinyin annotation method. Naturally you should give it a name." It was a good thing to leave a name in history. Many people were envious of it but could not come. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She was not good at giving names but someone liked to let her do it. "Why don't we just call it Xianxia?" Master Yuanjing glanced sideways and asked her with his eyes. Was there really no need to add a surname or something in front of Xianxia? This was a good opportunity to leave a name in history. It was not a cabbage on the street. If she missed this opportunity there would be no more. Jiang Pingji thought about it. She saw the contents of the bullet screen in the streaming room and immediately changed her mind. "Let's just call it Xianxia of Chinese." Master Yuanjing looked away and nodded. "Very good." With Master Yuanjing and the others around, Jiang Pingji was not worried about the Golden Scale Academy. Master Yuanjing and the others were full of fighting spirit. They were thinking about how to show off their skills. Jiang Pingji took the opportunity to sneak away. "Oh hey, streamer, you're such a hands-off boss. Why didn't your group of little princesses fall out with you?" "Funny tree you and I. The little princesses are no match for the streamer. Their combat power is not in the same dimension." "Givenchy little sheepskin, where are you going, streamer?" Jiang Pingji asked the maid to bring some water to wipe her cheeks, neck and arms. "Host V, I'm going to see Huijun and her baby." When Jiang Pingji saw Huijun, she was sitting in the corridor reading a book. There was a wooden pram beside her. Huijun heard the noise and looked in the direction of the sound. Her peaceful eyes gradually lit up. "Why are you back, Langjun?" Jiang Pingji said, "I'm back to handle official business. I heard that women need to take care of themselves after giving birth." "Why are you outside?" "I've given birth for 3 or 4 months. My body is recovering well. I don't have so many taboos." Huijun smiled faintly and pushed the pram into the house. The 2 fair and tender babies were sleeping soundly. They were not awakened at all. She said, "The sun in the courtyard is strong. Langjun, don't stay outside." "Which one is the younger sister?" Jiang Pingji asked as she lifted the diapers of the 2 babies. Both of the children were as fair as jade. Their chubby cheeks were pinkish and their white cheeks were pinkish. In comparison, the girl was slightly smaller than the boy. Her facial features were more delicate. "This is the younger sister. When she was just born she was as small as a kitten. Her cries were also delicate. I almost thought I couldn't raise her." Jiang Pingji tried to pinch the girl's face. The little girl's head tilted slightly. She opened her mouth and blew a bubble. The audience in the streaming room had been charmed by the 2 babies. They turned into weird uncles and aunties. They kept howling. "Have you named them?" "Not yet. I'm waiting for you to give them names." Huijun smiled. Chapter 9:15. No matter what Huijun said, Jiang Pingji was still merciful, and did not take charge of the naming. She took out a small bag of bamboo slips from her sleeve. "Take a look and see which name you like." Huijun took it with a smile. "Did Langjun make it?" Jiang Pingji denied. "No, he asked me to bring it over." When Huijun heard that it was a gift from Fu Wang, the smile on her face faded a little, but her hands did not stop moving. He untied the string of the bag and took out a few bamboo slips with a few names written on them. After looking at it carefully, Huijun put it aside and said with slight embarrassment, "Is there a need for him to name the child?" He caressed the bamboo piece with his fingers. The small bamboo piece was filled with densely packed words. Just by looking at the handwriting, it was extremely difficult to associate the owner of the words with Fu Wang. "I won't ask too much about your relationship with Xingtu. It's fine as long as you're happy. If you think raising a child is too stressful, don't hold it in. After all, the other half of the child's bloodline was given to him by Fu Xingtu, so it was only right and proper for him to pay for the child's upbringing. If they really don't treat them well, I'll take them in as my godsons and goddaughters. No one in this world will dare to bully them then." Huijun giggled. "Since that's the case, Langjun should let the child call you godmother as soon as possible. You're getting more and more fond of taking things out of context. When I clearly said that the main plan isn't good for both of them, you ignored this premise. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and said, that wild wolf has his eyes on you every day. If I snatch his wife and children, I'm afraid he'll go on strike. Although Fu Wang didn't say anything, he was still on guard against her. It wasn't because she was disloyal, it was because Huijuan's letters were always addressed to Jiang Pingji. The wild wolf was both envious and resentful. The way it looked at Jiang Pingji was strange. It was supposed to be a majestic wolf, but now it looked like a sad and pitiful husky. How dare he? Huijun frowned. Just as he finished speaking, the baby boy who was lying in the stroller let out 2 moans, and there was a faint sound of air being let out. Jiang Pingji said, it's time to change his diaper. Huijun looked at Jiang Pingji in astonishment. She raised her hand and touched the boy's butt. Indeed, she felt a warm and soft lump. He's so young, but his ability to torment people is like his father. Huijun mumbled and took out a clean diaper from the basket under the stroller. She did not avoid arousing suspicion and skillfully changed her boy's diaper in front of Jiang Pingji. Although she said that she didn't like it, there was a gentle light on her face that could melt a person's heart. After becoming a mother, Huijun was very different from before. Jiang Pingji said, before I left Chongzhou, Xingtu came to me to propose marriage. Huijun turned her head and clicked her tongue. Is he worthy of you? Jiang Pingji smiled and explained, what are you thinking about? He thinks that you are similar to one. Both of you are orphans, but you are close to me and treat me as half a family. He's imitating Han Mei. If he can convince me, it won't be a problem for him to marry you again. Huijun wiped her son's butt and put the dirty diaper into the clothes basket. It's not like you don't know my background. I can't even dream of living like this. How would I dare to hope for more? General Fu and I are not on the same path. I don't want to be entangled with him. Huijuan's expression was calm. She said, I'm not belittling myself. I just like how I am now. I don't want anything else. I just hope that I can help you in the future. Jiang Pingji looked at Huijuan's face carefully. She saw that her words were from the bottom of her heart, so she did not force it. I just think, Xingtu won't be so easy to get rid of. Huijun said, why would I be afraid of him? She had used her honey trap at Jimen Pass, but Fu Xingtu had still been defeated. As she spoke, Jiang Pingji noticed that there was a bookshelf in Huijuan's room. There were many handwritten bamboo scrolls on the shelf. Huijun noticed her gaze and stood up to take a few scrolls. Langjun is very knowledgeable. Do you have any research on these? Jiang Pingji opened the scroll and found that it was full of Huijuan's handwriting. There were all kinds of documents about dyeing cloth, printing and dyeing, as well as all kinds of spices and rouge. Apart from that, Jiang Pingji also saw a drawing of a foot spinning wheel. I've been in the palace of Dongqing for a few years and have seen a lot. I'm wondering if I can start a business in this area to make a living. When I was in the palace, I vaguely heard someone mention that there was a small eunuch in the palace who contributed a skill that was passed down in their family. This skill can dye many bright and beautiful fabrics. I asked a few questions and now it's coming in handy. Huijun was a strong-willed person. She did not want to rely on others too much, even if that person was Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji smiled. Although I don't have much research, all women love to look good. Rouge, cosmetics, fabrics and jewelry always cost a lot. If you do business in this area and manage it seriously, you may be able to make a lot of money. I have high hopes for you. After saying that, she asked again, I'm looking at the spinning wheel on the scroll. Did you draw it? Huijun said, yes, I learned a thing or two from the carpenters at the woodwork shop. I heard that this drawing method was taught to them by you. You're very talented. I suddenly thought of something. Huijun asked, what did you think of? The spinning wheel you drew, is it a foot spinning wheel? Yes. Most people use spinning pendants. A foot spinning wheel was not something ordinary people could come into contact with. I suddenly thought of the water wheel that Shiheng worked on previously. Zhang Ping's water wheel contributed greatly to the prosperity of agriculture in Wanzhou. It saved a lot of manpower for irrigation. Huijun could not keep up with Jiang Pingji's thoughts. She did not understand how the topic had changed from a foot spinning wheel to a water wheel. Jiang Pingji said, I'm just a little curious. If we replace manpower with water and make the foot spinning wheel work, Huijun. Longjuan's idea is really bold. Huijun had never tried to link two completely unrelated things together. However, I think this idea is feasible. Jiang Pingji came from the future. Even if she was not clear about the things of the ancient times, her vision and height were beyond the reach of ordinary people. Humans had grown step by step with the help of all kinds of external forces. If that was the case, why couldn't they use water power? The improved water wheel could draw water from the ground to a higher place, allowing the water to flow into a tank and irrigate the farmland. Could also automatically pound rice. If that was the case, why couldn't they use water power to replace manpower to spin? People would get tired, but if the water did not dry up, it could continue to work, right? After Jiang Pingji finished speaking, Huijuan's eyes showed that she was deep in thought. However, although she understood the structure of the foot spinning wheel, she did not know how to modify it. Jiang Pingji said, Shiheng's craftsmanship is not bad. Chongming studies water conservancy. If there's anything you don't understand, you can write a letter to Shangjing to ask them. If that doesn't work, the masters at the Golden Scale Academy are also knowledgeable people. Perhaps they can provide valuable advice. Chapter 9:16. Huijuan's expression showed that she was somewhat tempted, but it was unknown what she thought of, but in the end she still retreated. Teach, this isn't too good, is it? Jiang Pingji teased the boy whose eyes were rolling around, while her other hand pinched the girl's little foot. She was having a great time. What's not good about it? Wanzhou was far more open-minded than the outside world. Not only was there a large-scale regular female battalion, but there were also 30% female patrols on the streets. What's wrong with Huijuan's invention? After Jiang Pingji finished speaking, the boy seemed to have seen her. His black eyes stared at her and followed her movements. Huijun stammered, I'm afraid I won't do well and ruin Longjuan's reputation. What are you afraid of? Even if the sky falls, there's someone tall to hold it up, and even if things don't work out, there's still me. It doesn't matter if you fail, but what if you succeed? Jiang Pingji pinched her feet and finally woke her up. The girl did not shy away from strangers. She stretched out her fair arms towards Jiang Pingji, begging for a hug. Jiang Pingji picked up the child. She held her neck with one hand and passed her other hand between her chubby legs. She used her palm to support her vest. This position was very comfortable for a baby. Baby girl pursed her lips and blew bubbles lazily. She stared at him without blinking. Your two children are brave. They didn't even cry when they saw me. Jiang Pingji especially liked cute children who were not afraid of her. She referred to Feng Jin's family's Chongqing for details. Huijun watched as Jiang Pingji teased the girl. Her perturbed heart suddenly calmed down. She even gained some courage. His temperament is just like that boorish man. He's very bold. Huijun pursed her lips and smiled faintly. There was relief in her eyes. Because she became a mother, she became more cautious in her thinking. She was afraid that her past would be exposed. It didn't matter to her, but she was afraid that the child would be affected. Now that she had Jiang Pingji's promise, she heaved a sigh of relief. She was no longer uneasy but rather eager to try. If the water-powered spinning wheel was really built, how much manpower could be saved and how much help could Langjun be? Huijun began to think in the direction of water conservancy. Jiang Pingji continued to play with the two babies. Jiang Pingji stayed in Wanzhou for more than half a month. Not only did she have to check on the government affairs of the various counties in Wanzhou, but she also had to pay attention to the progress of the Golden Scale Academy in learning Pinyin. After observing them for a few days, she found that these children were exceptionally diligent in their studies. They didn't even need anyone to supervise them. They were extremely self-disciplined. Midnight epilepsy. This is the ancient version of a classroom. All the radishes look fresh and delicious. Crying rain in the cloud. Streamer, can I give you a suggestion? You should let these children attend classes at different times. Otherwise, it'll be so tiring. Li Wushuang, that's right. After all, there's a limit to a person's attention span. They're still kids and their energy is incomparable to that of adults. Those teachers would lecture for the entire morning. Not only could the teachers not bear it, but the students were also more tired and their learning efficiency was lower. Jiang Pingji secretly watched the students in class for 2 days. The audience was forced to watch for 2 days too. After watching it on the first day, many viewers expressed that they could not take it anymore. There was no other reason for it. A single class was too long. The Jinlin Academy was basically run by Qing Qing and the others. Jiang Pingji did not know much about the academy. It was her first time attending a class in person. After listening for a whole morning, she found many drawbacks. She combined the suggestions of the audience and wrote a serious summary. Master Yuanjing had decades of teaching experience. He could be considered a leading figure in the field of education. However, he had a broad temperament. When Jiang Pingji suggested something to him, he listened carefully. If it was feasible, he would correct it. If it was not feasible, he would carefully discuss the pros and cons with Jiang Pingji. Not to mention anything else, just this spirit and attitude was worth learning from. Master Yuanjing listened for a while. He asked doubtfully, "Magistrate Lu, do you mean to divide the classes?" Jiang Pingji said, "That's exactly what I mean. I observe that every class lasts at least 2 hours. Even adults feel tired, let alone a group of children. If they learn in a state of exhaustion, how much can the students learn? In my opinion, it's better to divide the classes and set a time. For example, a class lasts half an hour or a quarter of an hour. After the class, the children will be given some time to rest and adjust before the next class. The knowledge they learn in each class can be different. Knowledge teaching can be interspersed. In this way, the pressure on the teachers can be reduced, and the children won't be tired from learning. It's like you can't become fat with one bite. You have to take one step at a time to travel 10,000 miles. Master Yuanjing was stunned. He carefully considered Jiang Pingji's suggestion. The students he taught were usually above 10 years old. Most of the students in the Golden Scale Academy were between 5 and 7 years old. Hearing Jiang Pingji's words, Master Yuanjing felt that his previous education method was indeed not suitable for young children. Let me think about it. Master Yuanjing did not have the final say in the Golden Scale Academy. If he wanted to adjust the class schedule, he had to communicate with a few teachers. Watching a group of radishes reading, Jiang Pingji noticed that one of the radishes looked particularly fresh and delicious. Upon closer inspection, it was Feng Yi, the only son of Feng Zhen's family. Study hard. When you grow up, take over your father's position. Jiang Pingji called him over and took advantage of him. For example, she pinched his little face and rubbed his hair. His little face was ravaged by Jiang Pingji, but Feng Yi remained as still as a mountain. He only pursed his lips tighter. He said methodically, "I won't let you down." Jiang Pingji said, "He really doesn't look like Feng Longzi's son. He must have been blessed to have such a good boy." Feng Yi knew that Jiang Pingji was praising him. When he heard her say that his father was not good, his eyes showed disapproval. "Hey, you have a little temper." Jiang Pingji ravaged his face. She would not stop until his fair face turned red. "I don't dare." Jiang Pingji said, "My body is a little weak. A man has to be stronger. Otherwise, I won't even be able to carry the girl I like." Feng Yi frowned. It was no wonder that the magistrate of Lu Prefecture in front of him could collude with his father. Both of them spoke indecently. Weren't they afraid of teaching a bad person by saying that in front of a 7-year-old child? Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of something. She asked Feng Yi, "How are your studies?" "Not bad." Feng Yi had been in school for a few years. He was talented. The difficulty of studying in the Golden Scale Academy was too low for him. He was a top student who could even recite the Wuxia rhyming book fluently. "I'll give you a task." Feng Yi was stunned for a moment. He solemnly bowed to Jiang Pingji. "Please speak, magistrate." After half a year, bring a few of the top children in the Golden Scale Academy to challenge the Golden Scale Pavilion. Feng Yi was speechless. Jiang Pingji added, "You have to attack those arrogant scholars from all aspects. Do you understand? If the sky is pierced, I'll bear it for you." Chapter 9:17. Feng Zhen, who was far away in Chongzhou, did not know that his darling had been harmed by Jiang Pingji. After settling the matters in Wanzhou, Jiang Pingji prepared to return to Chongzhou to preside over the overall situation. Wanzhou recruited many middle-level talents. These people had clean backgrounds and were not of high birth. They were hardworking and easy to manipulate. Jiang Pingji met them one by one. She praised Su Ku and Feng Jin again and gave them a bonus. As for Feng Jin's indirect questions about the break, she pretended to be deaf and dumb. The situation in Wanzhou was stable, but there was trouble in Chongzhou. The gentry clans in Chongzhou had learned their lesson after being bullied by her. But not long after she left, they returned to their old ways and wanted to cause trouble for her. Haha, a bunch of idiots. Jiang Pingji laughed coldly. Do these people think the coffins are not placed long enough and the corpses are not rotten enough? Her words were vicious. If the gentry clans in Chongzhou heard them, they would definitely vomit blood in anger. Last winter, Jiang Pingji entered Chongzhou and killed several senior gentry clans in Chongzhou. She even used the military to suppress and intimidate them. She gathered one group of people to suppress another. Her clean and efficient methods scared the gentry clans so much that they did not dare to let out a fart. She even sent troops to surround their mansions, forcing them to be unable to bury their relatives' corpses in their ancestral graves. They could only stay in the mourning hall. This stop lasted until summer. The corpses had already decomposed into white bones. The stench of corpses filled the air. The gentry clans finally could not resist anymore. They gave in to Jiang Pingji and unwillingly spat out a portion of the land deeds. However, Jiang Pingji was a ruthless person. She refused to withdraw her troops even after receiving the land deeds. They had to spit out all the land they had seized from the people. After a stalemate, the gentry clans in Chongzhou could only bear with the pain and swallow their resentment. They swallowed their resentment, but the death grudge was also settled. When they buried the corpses of their relatives in their ancestral graves, Jiang Pingji ran off to Wanzhou. They had nowhere to vent their anger. However, they could not kill Jiang Pingji, but it did not mean that they could not get back at them. What were the gentry clans? They were a group that placed their personal and family interests above the interests of the country. As long as their families did not fall, the carnage outside had nothing to do with them. In order to take revenge on Jiang Pingji, a few families formed an alliance in private and planned to join forces with the north borderline to betray their teammates. Of course, this matter was exposed to Jiang Pingji, which showed how bad their confidentiality measures were. In fact, the ancients did not seem to have any sense of secrecy. In the history of the previous dynasty, how many coups were stifled because of leaks? Su Ku also saw the secret report and couldn't help but be speechless. These people are really, even if the Lord was too ruthless, wasn't the cause because they forcibly occupied the fertile land, oppressed the good people and trampled on the common people? They had done such a heinous thing, and now that their Lord had forced them to spit it out, did they still feel that they had been wronged? Not only did they suffer grievances, they even allied with the forces of the northern borderline and prepared to open an opening at the border to let the cavalry of the northern borderline break in. Fortunately, the northern border has yet to recover from the horse plague 2 years ago. Even if we send the cavalry to kill and pillage, there won't be many of them. Su Ku furrowed his brows and said, otherwise wouldn't we be inviting a wolf into the house? Those people actually dared to do such a thing. Jiang Pingji laughed coldly. She crushed the secret letter, her eyes filled with a cold, murderous intent. I originally wanted to keep them for a while, but I didn't expect them to be tired of living and take the initiative to hand over their weaknesses. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that they had colluded with the enemy and committed treason was enough to consign them to eternal damnation. Previously, Jiang Pingji falsely accused them of colluding with the enemy and committing treason, but she didn't have concrete evidence in her hands. She could only rely on her mouth to distort the purpose of their annexation of land. Now that she had concrete evidence in her hands, she didn't believe that she couldn't kill these vermin. Does my lord want to catch them all in one fell swoop? Jiang Pingji said, they are playthings that cause endless harm. It's better to squash them to death as soon as possible. According to the original plan, she wanted to deal with them before the war with the northern borderline. She didn't expect them to be even more anxious than she was, taking advantage of the time when she was not in Chongzhou to plot to take away her assets. These people were still too impatient. Jiang Pingji left Chongzhou. How could she not send people to keep an eye on them? At such a time they should be even more cautious, tuck their tails between their legs and not let the cat out of the bag. However, they couldn't swallow their anger and had to stir up trouble. However, they couldn't be blamed for being stupid. Jiang Pingji was really too ruthless. If they didn't take advantage of the time when Jiang Pingji was not in Chongzhou, according to the trend of her development in Chongzhou, the longer they delayed, the more powerful she would be. Their hopes of revenge would become smaller and smaller. It was a pity that they underestimated Feng Zhen and Qiguan Rang's abilities. How could the combat power of the two of them be as simple as 1 + 1? It was estimated that before Jiang Pingji reached Chongzhou, these jumping clowns would have already been caught by their inescapable net. Reality proved that Jiang Pingji's guess was not wrong. My lord, you look radiant. Wen Zheng and I, on the other hand, have been restless for more than a month. Feng Zhen had a pair of dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he had been sucked dry by a demoness. Why are you all acting like this? Jiang Pingji rushed to Chongzhou without stopping. Along the way she didn't have time to take a detour to see Wei Ci. When she reached Chongzhou she saw that her two right-hand men looked like they hadn't slept for a long time. Wen Zheng's left arm was even tied with a white cloth. Those people are planning to fight to the death. Previously they sent men to assassinate Wen Zheng. When the assassination failed they instigated others to cause trouble. Fortunately Han Mei and Wen Zheng were discussing the matter of farming and recruiting soldiers. That was how I managed to survive. When Qiguan Rang was assassinated, Jiang Pingji was still on the road, so she didn't receive the news. What? Haven't these people been arrested? Jiang Pingji glanced at Qiguan Rang. When his eyes met hers he winked. His gaze carried a hint of meaning. She was so angry that her whole body was trembling. He thought more than Feng Zhen. Why did Qiguan Rang have to be the one who was assassinated? One had to know that Qiguan Rang's position was impartial. In comparison, Feng Zhen's hatred was greater. She was afraid that someone was trying to fish in troubled waters. Jiang Pingji snorted. Feng Zhen thought she didn't understand and explained, although those people were arrested, my lord, the relationship between the aristocratic families in Chongzhou is very complicated. They are either relatives or friends, or they are students and former officials. Not only are they friends, but they are also bound by blood ties that cannot be severed. Previously they could still bear with it when they only locked up people. Now it's different. Lives are at stake. How can they sit still? Wen Zheng's danger is just the beginning. We don't know what will happen in the future. Jiang Pingji took a deep breath. She said calmly, "You're wrong. They will betray the country for their personal and family interests and collude with the northern borderline. Of course they will also get close to me and abandon those abandoned children for the sake of making others jealous." Feng Zhen asked, "Then what does my lord mean?" Chapter 9:18. Feng Zhen smiled bitterly. This was indeed his lord's unique style of doing things. Killing was just a matter of nodding to the ground. The most troublesome part was dealing with the aftermath. Seeing Feng Zhen's expression, Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows and asked him, "Zisha doesn't agree?" Feng Zhen shook his head. It wasn't that he didn't agree, he was just worried. The aristocratic families in Chongzhou weren't big, but the relationships between them were very complicated. If the lord chose to cut them all off, it would cause more trouble. But if she didn't do anything about it, where would the lord's dignity be? "Why don't we just kill the bandit leaders?" Feng Zhen suggested against his will. He had been with Jiang Pingji for a long time and his preferences had changed. Compared to intricate schemes, he preferred simple and violent methods. But as a strategist he couldn't act on impulse. He had to prioritize the lord's interests. "There's no need. Just kill them all." Jiang Pingji's eyes shone with a cold glint. Letting a tiger return to the mountains will lead to endless trouble. In a place like Chongzhou the temple is small but the wind is strong. The relationships between them are complicated. If we only kill the bandit leaders, it's the same as letting them preserve their strength. As long as they are alive they can make a comeback if they seize the opportunity. Rather than that, we might as well kill them all. If we only kill the bandit leaders, the remaining people will still cause trouble. If that's the case, we might as well uproot them and not leave any future troubles. These families are a lesson to be learned from. Punish them harshly and let others see what happens when they betray the country. Since Jiang Pingji had said so, Feng Zhen naturally wouldn't object. He narrowed his eyes slyly and his lips curled into a scheming smile. In the days when Jiang Pingji wasn't around he had suffered many grievances. Now that he could get back at her, how could he not be happy? Feng Zhen obeyed her orders and went to make arrangements. Only Jiang Pingji and the silent Qiguan Rang were left. "Are you all right? Does your wound still hurt?" Jiang Pingji asked softly. Qiguan Rang's stiff lips twitched. He said, "This time, I really suffered an unexpected disaster." Jiang Pingji understood the meaning behind his words. She restrained the smile on her lips and resumed her cold expression. "Do you think the people who assassinated you were the aristocrats of Chongzhou or?" Jiang Pingji asked Qiguan Rang in a low voice. Rang thought for a while, his brows furrowed, and he said in a low voice, "I'm afraid it's a borrowed knife to kill. On the surface, it's the aristocratic families of Chongzhou who have lost their minds and sent assassins, but in the dark there's another master. That person is extremely cautious. If I didn't take precautions in advance, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to find any clues." Jiang Pingji took a deep breath and suppressed the restlessness and anger in her heart. Rang continued, "Even so, that person did not leave behind any evidence. Rang is only suspicious." Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows. Her eyes seemed to be surging with a thick and frightening fierceness. "Your Highness, you must not let your guard down." Rang clenched the feather fan in his hand and used it to knock on the table. It made a crisp sound and interrupted Jiang Pingji's train of thought. "A little impatience will spoil a great plan. Let me think that the other party doesn't really want to take my life. It's most likely a test." Jiang Pingji raised her eyes and looked at Rang. "You also think that person is testing us?" What was there to test? To test whether Jiang Pingji had already discovered the other party's existence. If she was discovered, the conflict between the two would definitely surface. The other party could change his plan as soon as possible. If after the test he discovered that Jiang Pingji was still ignorant, the other party could be at ease and continue to lurk behind the scenes. "I'm at least 70% sure." Rang waved his feather fan and lowered his eyes. "Your Highness, you must be careful. Don't let the cat out of the bag." Jiang Pingji said, "I will pretend that nothing happened. Let's see who can't hold back their anger first." Recently, the atmosphere in Chongzhou was treacherous. It was as if it was shrouded in a layer of low pressure that made it hard for people to breathe. When everyone received the news of Jiang Pingji's return to Chongzhou, another piece of news spread. How dare she? When they first heard that Jiang Pingji wanted to wipe out the aristocratic families of Chongzhou who participated in the rebellion, the entire aristocratic circle boiled over. They had more or less heard about the few families, but they never thought that Luxi would be so ruthless as to wipe out their entire families. Why wouldn't she dare? Those few idiots were arrogant. While Luxi was not in Chongzhou, they secretly contacted the northern borderline. Now that Dongqing is no longer a country, they only did it for their own future. There is nothing wrong with it. Of all the things he should not have done, he should not have been discovered by Luxi. Now that the evidence is in his hands, do you think Luxi will be merciful and let them go? Some were furious while others looked on coldly from the sidelines. The former were filled with righteous indignation and felt sympathetic for the loss of their own kind. The latter were ultimately outsiders, calmly watching the situation in Chongzhou change. But how can we be in cahoots with such a ruthless person who massacred the aristocratic families? Do not punish the officials, do not punish the commoners. The original meaning of this sentence should be that the scholar officials should not receive preferential treatment in sentencing, and the commoners should not be excluded from etiquette. But as the times changed, this sentence became the golden medal and privilege of the aristocratic class. Now it was twisted to mean that the scholar officials had the privilege of not being punished, and the commoners did not have the right to be treated with courtesy. Although the aristocratic families in Chongzhou were nouveau riches in the aristocratic circle, they were still above the commoners. Jiang Pingji wanted the lives of their entire clan because of the crime of secretly contacting the northern borderline. It was unreasonable. According to their thinking, a heavy punishment would suffice. Why would there be a need to resort to violence? Based on this woman will definitely lose the hearts of the people. Sooner or later she will die without a burial. Faced with such a statement, the clear-headed people smiled bitterly. They were very clear that as long as Luxi held the military power in his hands, the aristocratic families in Chongzhou would not be able to hurt her. A few scholars found Jiang Pingji together and advised her. They talked loudly, and the core meaning was that she was in the wrong. If it was a commoner who had colluded with the enemy and committed treason, they deserved to die. However, the person who had secretly contacted the northern borderline was an aristocratic family. They only needed to be taught a harsh lesson, fined and punished. There was no need to take their lives. Dongqing had a law. The aristocratic families could use enough money to exempt them from the death penalty. Even if it was a crime like secretly contacting the northern borderline, as long as they could afford it, they could be acquitted according to the law. Jiang Pingji looked at them coldly for a long time. After an hour, "Are you all thirsty?" The scholars echoed each other. They were eloquent, but unfortunately there was a hole in their brains. The scholars bowed to Jiang Pingji and stood proudly on the spot. They said, "Magistrate Lu, please reconsider." Jiang Pingji said coldly, "Looks like you're not thirsty. That's fine. I don't want to throw you into the well in the backyard and dirty my water. Someone throw out these fellows who have an undeserved reputation. From now on, if they dare to come to our door again, break their legs." After the scholars heard this, their faces turned ashen. Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes dangerously. "Throw them out." The scholars wanted to say something, but when they saw the guards in armor and brandishing their blades, they were as quiet as chickens, not daring to make a sound. It was at this moment that Fu Wang and Li Yun stepped in with a bloody aura. The scholars saw them and felt uneasy. "Is it done?" Jiang Pingji asked. Chapter 919. Jiang Pingji was also afraid that a long delay would bring trouble. After making up her mind, she let Fu Wang and Li Yun lead the troops to confiscate the houses and arrest the people. According to Dongqing's practice, confiscating property and exterminating 3 clans meant confiscating property. Confiscating property was easy to understand. It was nothing more than confiscating all property, including land, real estate, gold and silver, slave contracts. Exterminating 3 clans referred to the paternal, maternal and wife clans. If Dongqing's imperial power was stable, something as big as confiscating property and exterminating a clan needed the permission of the court. However, Dongqing was now ruled by the emperor. It was good enough that one edict could affect the entire imperial city. Why would Jiang Pingji care about him? Confiscating property and exterminating a clan was something she could do. However, she did not go too far. According to Dongqing's current laws, exterminating a clan was a rule. The offenders and the men in the family would all be executed. The women could be exempted from the death penalty. However, they would be made prostitutes for the officials or sent to the army as camp prostitutes. This outcome was even more horrifying than death. Jiang Pingji would rather give them a quick death. She did not want to use such methods to humiliate a group of weak women. After thinking about it, Jiang Pingji said, "Get someone to register all these women and demote them to commoners. Send them back to their parents' homes in private." The atmosphere in Chongzhou was more open. Women would not crazily treat men as their sky, let alone follow the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. Jiang Pingji gave them a way out and did not take their lives. She only sent them back to their parents' homes. This was already a great kindness. When the limelight was over, they could still get married again. By doing so, she subtly pacified the women's families so that they could not vent their anger. The catastrophe in Chongzhou lasted for more than a month. From the top to the bottom, everyone was in danger. While the gentry in Chongzhou were anxious and fearful, the Cui family, who had long boarded Jiang Pingji's pirate ship, were happy to see their teeth but not their eyes. The head of the Cui family, Cui Yu, even chatted with his friends in private. He said that this was the most successful business he had ever done. Although they gave up the land, they reaped even more benefits. The returns were far higher than the costs. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of the first year of Qingzong. It had been a year since Jiang Pingji took over Chongzhou. In the past year, she had gone from being looked down upon to being a great demon that everyone feared. She had Chongzhou in her hands. As for Yang Si, who had been thrown to Hu County by Jiang Pingji, he was even more impressive. He took over the administrative affairs of Hu County perfectly. Of course, it would be better if he could stop complaining and focus on working overtime. There were turbulent times outside, and there were dukes fighting during the new year. Only the territory under Jiang Pingji's rule was peaceful. Well, maybe it was too peaceful, which made people envious and jealous. Over the past year, Jiang Pingji had steadily strengthened herself, and the other feudal vassal forces had not been idle either. As the end of the year approached, a secret letter was delivered to Jiang Pingji. She was so shocked that she slammed the table after reading it. Like father, like son, Yang Tao has done a good job. Feng Zhen almost had a heart attack because of Jiang Pingji. Next time, could he at least give him a heads up before making a fuss so that he could be mentally prepared? Yang Tao? Isn't that the son of the late Dongmen Commandant Yang Jian? Qiguan Rang frowned slightly. Seeing Jiang Pingji's face full of admiration, he thought about the situation outside and had some guesses in his heart. During the alliance meeting at Huangshui, Qiguan Rang felt that Yang Tao was not an ordinary person. It was not surprising that he had turned into a dragon after meeting water. Fengzhen said, I remember hearing news about Yang Tao a while ago. After Yang Jian died, he turned to the false emperor. However, Yang Tao is not a man without ambition. His father Yang Jian had a disagreement with the false emperor. According to the false emperor's temperament, he would not treat Yang Tao kindly. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, a month ago Yang Tao launched a coup. The false emperor retreated in defeat. Now he has fled to Nanxing. Even though they had expected it, Qiguan Rang and Fengzhen were still shocked when they heard the truth. Xianxia was the false emperor's territory. Yang Tao's father Yang Jian had offended the false emperor. It was good enough that Yang Tao could keep his life. They did not expect this fellow to play the pig to eat the tiger without saying a word. He launched a coup right under the false emperor's nose and turned from guest to host. The false emperor seemed to have magnanimously accepted Yang Tao's defection, but he had been secretly targeting him. He did not even allow Yang Tao to touch military power. Yang Tao was aware of the situation he was in. He secretly formed an alliance with the court officials who were not loyal to the false emperor. They planned carefully and looked for a good opportunity to strike. A month ago, the false emperor brought his court officials and children to worship the heavens. Under Yan Lin's suggestion, Yang Tao claimed to be sick half a month earlier. He secretly quickened his pace. The sacrificial ceremony was solemn and grand. Elegant music was melodious and sonorous. The false emperor was immersed in his own imagination. He never expected that Yang Tao, who he thought was completely useless, would show his sharp teeth at this moment. Under Yan Lin's orderly command, the coup was like a thunderstorm. Everyone was at a loss as to what to do. Yang Tao's 3,000 men of sacrifice became the decisive force in the coup. Yan Lin forged documents and military orders, mobilized troops from all sides and controlled the armory and key departments. Before the false emperor, Prince Changshu, could react, they were already surrounded at the place where the sacrificial ceremony was held. By the time the false emperor wanted to mobilize troops to defend himself, it was already too late. A figure flashed across Qiguan Rang's mind. He said, it's obvious that this was a premeditated coup. The person who set it up was shrewd and ruthless. He was very good at playing with people's hearts. He was obviously at a disadvantage, but he was able to take advantage of every opportunity to attack the false emperor again and again. He made it impossible for the false emperor to calm down. Yang Tao was brave, but he lacked strategy. Even though he had grown a little after Yang Jian's death, he was still far from being as shrewd as the false emperor. In my opinion, all of this must have been done by an expert. I can't think of anyone else other than Yan Lin. Qiguan Rang's eyes flashed with coldness as he thought about this. He knew that Yan Lin was not a simple man, but he didn't expect him to be so capable. He had helped Yang Tao turn the tables from a disadvantageous position to an advantage. Now he could control the entire Zhangzhou effortlessly. What a pity. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have let Yan Lin live. Jiang Pingji said calmly, I also think that he was the one behind all of this. I have to say that he is indeed a meticulous and shrewd person. But he was able to help Yang Tao turn the tables. It was 50% strength and 50% luck. If it weren't for the fact that the Mengs and Zhangzhou realized that they couldn't help the false emperor and withdrew their troops back to Zhangzhou, Yan Lin wouldn't have been able to do this alone. If this is fate, Qiguan Rang said, I'm afraid he will be a formidable opponent. What are you afraid of? Jiang Pingji said, one person's energy is limited. No matter how capable Yan Lin was, he wasn't a god. Jiang Pingji stayed in the north, but the forces in the south of Dongqing were constantly changing. Yang Tao turned the tables and took over Zhangzhou. Huang Song, who was in Haozhou, didn't want to be outdone either. He took over the entire Haozhou. The Su brothers in Zhe County fought amongst themselves for a while. It was hard to tell who would win. In the end, they all set their sights on their old neighbor Hu County. The chief of Hu County was Wu Ma Shang, an old friend from the Huangshui meeting. Chapter 920. The mountains and rivers of his old country had been destroyed, and the people's lives were in dire straits. And Cui thought that he could rely on his military strength to reclaim his old country, but he had greatly underestimated the situation within Nanxing. Nanxing Jiangzhou. The barbarians of the four factions of Nanman only knew how to plunder and didn't know how to govern. Wherever they conquered, they would plunder and kill wantonly. He came empty-handed, but he left with a lot of money. Countless human heads and weeping women hung on the back of his horse. The heads were evidence of their military strength, and the women were spoils of war for them to vent their desires and show off their power. And Cui wandered to Dongqing and only managed to gather 6,000 men after much scheming. He thought that he had some confidence, but the situation in Nanqing was far worse than when he left. The aristocratic families and commoners couldn't stand the violence of Nanman and rose up in revolt. If they focused on the outside world, Nanqing might still be saved, but the enemies had yet to retreat and civil war had broken out. And Cui brought 6,000 men and sufficient rations to support Jiangzhou of Nanqing. He was originally from Jiangzhou of Nanqing. This wasn't just his homeland, but also where Madame N had built her connections. If he developed in Jiangzhou, not only could he use Madame Anne's remaining connections, but he could also get help from his old friends. In the beginning, Cui's development was not bad. He used the teachings of the Red Lotus Group to recruit many militias and strengthen himself. But he quickly ran into a wall. Because of this, Cui lost more than half of his troops, and only 3,000 were left. Other than Cui, there were 2 other aristocratic families and a militia force in Jiangzhou. Cui chose to work with the aristocratic family that was on good terms with Madame N, but unexpectedly they had ulterior motives. Although Cui was intelligent, he wasn't good at scheming. He was unknowingly tricked by the other party. Cui and Duishi. Tui meant worry. The elders had given Cui the nickname Duishi. It sounded tacky, but it was full of good wishes. They knew that this person was destined to have a difficult life. In his previous life he had toiled for more than a decade, and in the end he had risked everything to ask Wei Ci for help. He had taken over half of Nanqing. Now he wasn't as down and out as he would be in the future, but he was still unlucky. Although he was from Nanqing, the troops he brought were all from Dongqing. In the eyes of the feudal lords in Nanqing, Cui was not on the right side. How could an outsider fight with them for power? If it wasn't a pretense, then it was the thought of using Cui to do his dirty work. He only treated Cui as a spear. At first Cui did not realize this. When he ran into a wall and lost half of his troops, he suddenly realized. Cui had just passed the age of 30, so he could still withstand such a blow. However, his eyes couldn't help but turn red. However, after this setback he also realized his shortcomings. He couldn't outcalculate others and he didn't have a strategist by his side. His sworn brothers were also impulsive people. Such a combination could be easily manipulated by others, and the slightest provocation could ruin the whole thing. Cui thought for a moment. He planned to use his old friendship to invite a famous scholar to help him. However, Cui had no manpower, no land, and no money. Moreover, she had just suffered a defeat. Who would be willing to assist a lord like this? Even if Cui's status was illustrious, the entire family had been wiped out by the barbarians, and Cui's wife and children had even been humiliated and killed by the barbarians. Was such a failed man worthy of the loyalty of others? Thus, every time Cui came to invite them, many famous people would either avoid meeting him or refuse him. Cui was not a thick-skinned person. He knew that others did not like his conditions, so he could only return resentfully. On one hand, he led his subordinates to seek refuge everywhere, and on the other he looked for a chance to turn things around. Finally he found his chance. I heard that Master Yuanjing's disciple is traveling nearby to study. Cui's eyes burned. He remembered the performance of Master Yuanjing's first disciple, Qing Jing, during the Huangshui meeting. The fire in his heart burned even more. Traveling? What's going on here? Which idiot came here to study? My lord, did you hear wrongly? Although Dongqing was chaotic, it was not as chaotic as Nanqing. There were barbarians everywhere who wreaked havoc and plundered. A scholar traveling to a war-torn country to study was not traveling thousands of miles to read thousands of books. It was clearly rushing to find the king of hell to reincarnate. Cui said, whether it's true or not, we should at least give it a try. The subordinates beside him were nervous. They really did not think highly of Cui's plan. Cui smiled. Master Yuanjing has a total of 4 disciples. His first disciple Qing Yumo now works for Huang Song of Haozhou. His youngest disciple Wei Ci Wei Zixiao works for Lu Shi of Wanzhou. The remaining 2 are Han Yu Han Wenbin and Lu Jing Lu Shaoyin. I heard that Han Yu has accepted the appointment of Su Bei, the eldest grandson of the Su family in Zhou County of Dongqing. Then the remaining one. Lu Jing? Never heard of him. Everyone shook their heads like a rattle drum. Lu Jing was really not famous. Among Master Yuanjing's 4 disciples, Qing Jing and Han Yu were from the famous Langia family. Wei Xi's status was slightly lower, and Lu Jing was the son of a hunter. And Cui had never heard of Lu Zheng's name, but he had tried to get close to Qing Jing during the Huangshui meeting. After asking around, he found out the names of Master Yuanjing's 4 disciples. I have a chance because I have never heard of him. And Cui took a deep breath and said, I heard that Lu Jing intends to visit the governor of Jiang Prefecture. The governor of Jiang Prefecture is my childhood friend. I know his temperament very well. He has a very strong sense of family background, but he does a good job on the surface. He won't look down on Lu Jing in front of him, nor will he chase him away. For the sake of being wise, he will even put on a show and appoint Lu Jing. But according to my understanding of the governor of Jiang Prefecture, he will never put the son of a hunter in an important position. Master Yuanjing's disciple must have something special about him, and his temperament must be more arrogant than ordinary people. In my opinion, Lu Jing will definitely not be able to accept such cold treatment. In other words, Lu Zheng's setback gave An Cui a chance to enter the governor's eyes. A few subordinates listened to An Cui's words. They did not say anything on the surface, but they were secretly disapproving. In their opinion, there must be something wrong with a scholar who went to a war-torn country to study. However, his lord liked him and wanted to recruit him wholeheartedly. It turned out that An Cui's guess was right. Unexpectedly, Lu Jing also saw that the governor of Jiang Prefecture was not reliable. He rejected the governor's appointment and continued to study. An Cui was anxious and immediately paid a visit with generous gifts. I won't see you. Lu Jing wore a wide-sleeved cloak and a cloth scarf on his head. He was unadorned and looked like a poor scholar. The boy servant blinked and said, Sir, this is his 2nd time. I won't see him even if he comes 20 times, much less 2 times. Lu Jing narrowed his eyes. He had grown a beard now. Although his face was still tender, he was far more mature than before. The boy servant raised his head and said, In ancient times, there were 3 attendants who came out of the mountains. Sir, you won't move even after 20 attendants? Study well and don't drop your bag. You'll make me feel awkward. The boy servant stuck out his tongue and followed Lu Jing obediently. He did not dare to let An Cui enter again. Why don't you like him, sir? The timing is not right. But he still has the arrogance of a landowning household. That alone makes him unworthy of my consideration. Then when will it be enough? Chapter 921. Back then, during the earthquake in Dongqing, the Tsingyi army and the Red Lotus group rose up in revolt and wreaked havoc in the north. At that time, the common people all moved their families to the south to escape the chaos of war. Now that several years had passed, the situation had changed. The north was peaceful while the outside world was in full swing. There were even dukes fighting each other during the new year. When the group arrived at the latrine where Hu County Chief Wumashang had drowned, his body was covered in feces and crawling with maggots. They couldn't help but sigh. Wumashang was a member of the royal family, a descendant of the heavens. He ended up like this in his middle age. I know. I heard that this person almost became emperor. He was one of the top figures in the 20-some Dukes alliance at Huang River. Who knew that he would die a violent death? The scholar paused and continued, Do you know why his body was found in the latrine pit? Is there an inside story? His companion asked curiously. Of course there is, the scholar said. I heard that the Su brothers from Zhou County were locked in a fierce battle and had endless internal strife. Just then Wumashang wanted to take advantage of the conflict between the Su brothers and take advantage of it. Who knew that the Su brothers would unite against the outsiders and send troops to attack Hu County after the new year. When the army attacked, Hu County Chief Wumashang was still doing it with his beautiful concubine. When he heard the news that the enemy had attacked, he was so scared that he lost his horse. His concubine and servants only cared about their own lives. They hurriedly threw his body into the latrine in the backyard. It was said that after losing his horse, he regained his final radiance and watched helplessly as he was thrown into the latrine and drowned. The so-called horse death, also known as sudden death during intercourse, was also known as withdrawal syndrome. It was an unexpected death caused by sexual activity. The scholar described it vividly as if he had seen it with his own eyes. This is really pitiful. His companion was speechless for a long time. After a while he asked again, "But there is one thing I don't understand. I heard that the Su brothers from Zhou County have always been at odds with each other. Why did they put aside their differences and join forces to attack Hu County? If the two brothers hadn't caused such a ruckus, Hu County Chief Wumashang wouldn't have been so defenseless. I have a feeling that there must be an expert guiding us to attack Hu County at this time after the new year." Wumashang had been planning to reap the benefits from the fight, but he never expected that his brothers, who had been at each other's throats just a second ago, would stab him in the back in the next second. It was too sudden. Who in the world did not know of the grudge between the two brothers Su Bei and Su Fei? Rumor has it that it was Han Yu, Su Pei's strategist, who had repeatedly asked for advice and even risked his life to persuade Su Fei. Only then did the collaboration come about. Han Yu. This name sounds a bit familiar. Wait, I remember now. Isn't Han Yu the third rank in Tian Wu's 15-year assessment? In that year's assessment, Master Yuanjing's disciple took the top 2 spots. If Dongqing had not fallen apart, perhaps these two people would still be the pillars of the country. Otherwise, why would people say that Master Yuanjing is powerful? None of his disciples are easy to provoke. The two of them drank several cups of wine and soon they were drunk. Now that the world is in chaos, I wonder how many more times we can see such prosperity. They sat by the window on the second floor of the tea house. From this position they could clearly see the bustling crowd downstairs. Just after the new year, the closed market had reopened, and the people's faces were still filled with unfinished joy. Thinking about the outside world, such a prosperous scene was really rare. So what if he was one of the feudal lords? Just look at Wumashang and you will know the fate of the loser. Wumashang was based in Hu County. Although the area of Hu County was not as large as Wanzhou, it was still 2/3 of the county. It was also a good place with fertile farmland. Wumashang had a good card in his hand, but his opponent was too strong. In the end he ended up drowning in a latrine. Isn't that a child from the academy next door? As he drank his wine happily, a rather unlucky blue and white color entered his line of sight. The scholar furrowed his brows. In Wanzhou, only the students of the Golden Scale Academy could wear such clothes outside. The Golden Scale Pavilion was open to the public, attracting countless students from thousands of miles away to study, further increasing the prosperity of Wanzhou. In this era books were precious. The students drooled over the countless books, wishing that they could stay here for the rest of their lives. Who would be willing to move? The slightly wealthier scholars directly bought houses, the poorer ones rented, and the poorer ones had to share a house with several people. After living here for a long time, they also felt a sense of belonging to the Golden Scale Pavilion. Many people jokingly called the Golden Scale Academy the academy next door, and their words carried a hint of intimacy. Why did these children come to the Golden Scale Pavilion? In the eyes of the crowd, 6- or 7-year-old children were disgusted by cats and dogs. They came to the Golden Scale Pavilion and destroyed the valuable books. So, this isn't a place for children like you. Leave quickly. More than 10 children wore the Golden Scale Academy's uniform of blue and white. There were both boys and girls. Not all of them looked good, but at least they kept themselves clean. Perhaps because they thought it was unlucky for children to dress like this during the new year, everyone wore red silk flowers on their heads and a red cloak over their heads. Even though they were dressed like this, the crowd could still recognize their signature blue and white uniforms. The Golden Scale Pavilion doesn't care about identity or background. Why can't I go in? The leading child looked to be around 8 or 9 years old. He looked weak, but his brows were clear. It was Fengyi. He wasn't angry when he was stopped. He just tried to reason with the other party in a well-behaved manner. Hey, have you finished learning how to read? The books in the Golden Scale Pavilion are precious. It's not a place for children like you to play. The scholars of the Golden Scale Pavilion were not unreasonable. They didn't treat the children badly. However, their stance was firm. Little children couldn't enter the Golden Scale Pavilion. I'm not going to bother with you, Fengyi said. He bypassed that person and took out his token to hand over to the guard of the Golden Scale Pavilion. The students who followed him lined up to be enthroned. The scholars thought that the guard would stop this group of mischievous children. They didn't expect. Why are they allowed to go in? The scholar widened his eyes in shock. Aren't they afraid that this group of mischievous children would cause a ruckus and burn the entire Golden Scale Pavilion? The guard said, they can go in anyway. On the other side, Feng Yi led his people and ran towards the main hall of the Golden Scale Pavilion. Although they were small in number, they had a lot of people. When they walked together, they looked imposing. Feng Daong, what should we do next? The girl's voice was tender. She looked fair and plump like a jade sculpture. She was known as the flower of the Golden Scale Academy. Who else could she be but Feng Jin's Chongqing? Brother. Feng Yi was angry. The Chongqing who called him Brother Feng sweetly just now called him Feng Dong the moment they met. Hey, my good brother. Feng Yi was speechless. Remember, show us the imposing manner of challenging the arena. We might lose, but we can't lose. After entering the main hall of the Golden Scale Pavilion, the 15 uniformly dressed children became a strange sight. They attracted the attention of everyone present. The other students were still a little frightened. However, Feng Yi straightened his back and borrowed books from the maidservant expressionlessly. The busybody eavesdropped. The scholars couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 922. Chongqing's ears were sharp. She snorted softly, pouted her mouth and complained to Feng Yi. Feng Daong, they said we can't understand. After saying that, Chongqing rolled up her wide sleeves. She had just rolled up one sleeve with great effort and the other slipped down her arm. Therefore Chongqing pouted and quietly squatted on the mat. She lowered her head and struggled to adjust her sleeves. Feng Yi's eyes slanted and he looked down at Chongqing, who was panting with anger. He felt inexplicably tired. Was this what she meant by losing but not losing the battle? Come here, I'll help you tuck it in. Feng Yi waved at Chongqing and the chubby little boy happily moved over. The scholars saw that the children were so friendly and they looked good. Under the double filter they could not help but like them a little. A noisy child is a little devil and a quiet child is a little angel. After watching for a while, the scholars went to do their own things and occasionally looked at the little children. The books of Golden Scale Pavilion were all printed on Xian paper or bamboo paper. Even if they were immersed in reading all day long, the impression that paper books were too precious had been formed. If a naughty child tore one, they would faint from heartache. Feng Yi rolled up Chongqing's sleeves, and the maidservant of Golden Scale Pavilion brought the books they needed. He curled his lips into a smile. Thank you. 15 little children surrounded a large table and each of them sat upright. There was a book spread out in front of them and they were reading with serious expressions. The scholars who came and went saw this scene and they found it a little funny. They pretended to be good and people who did not know would think that these children were really literate. Chongqing could not sit still after sitting for a while. She twisted her butt, moved her knees and rubbed from her mat to Feng Yi's mat. Feng Daong, I can't read these words. Feng Yi took a look and it turned out to be a few relatively rare words. For Chongqing, who could only read half of the words, it was indeed very difficult. I'll teach you. Feng Yi used his finger to draw a few characters on the paper, and for Chongqing to read he even repeated it twice. Chongqing muttered, but she could not find the correct pronunciation after several times and her face wrinkled. She had only studied in Golden Scale Academy for 3 months, and she was proficient in pinyin, but not proficient in using it. Feng Yi was not in a hurry and patiently waited for her to read it. The scholars who were observing the situation found it funny and asked, "Little lady, what words do you not know? I can teach you." Feng Yi squinted his eyes, frivolous. Chongqing raised her head. Most of her hair covered her forehead, making her little face look even rounder. The scholars laughed. Daong is the little brother next to you. The scholar smiled and said, Feng Daong, is this little brother beside you? He is still and does not know as. He is. He was already so old, yet he still wanted to coax Chongqing to call him brother. Shameless. And because Daong and father. Dao and. Do you know what a challenge is? It is very powerful, 1 against 10. Daong's father is also very powerful. Daong will be as powerful in the future. The scholar listened to Chongqing and he could not help but smile. Even though Chongqing tried her best to explain, outsiders who did not understand the situation would only be confused. The only thing that could be understood was the challenge. Your Feng Daolong is still too young. The brothers here are all adults and they do not beat children. Chongqing tilted her head and looked at the scholar and then at Feng Yi. Daolong was indeed not as tall as the others and not as strong. How could he beat them? Chongqing looked at Feng Yi with grievance as if he was really facing the prospect of being beaten up. Feng Yi bowed to the scholar and said politely, I still have to learn from a few classmates, please help yourself. The scholar refused to leave. You are only at the age of Xianxia and you just finished reading Great Xia rhyming book, right? According to the current education progress, it was already very good for a 7 or 8-year-old child to finish reading Great Xia rhyming book. I am not talented and I have finished reading Great Xia rhyming book. Now I am learning 300,000 from the teachers, and the Book of Songs and the Analects of Confucius in spring. The scholar said, what is 300,000? The texts taught by the college students. He asked Feng Yi again, how old are you? Can you understand the Analects of Confucius? And you are learning the Book of Songs? Although I don't understand, I have already memorized it. As a top student, how could he not prepare in advance? The scholar was speechless. Kids nowadays were really amazing and they could boast to the sky. Which brat could be so good? You said that you have already memorized it? Feng Yi was silent for a moment and he said, I have memorized the original text, but I have only read the annotations written by the teachers a few times, and I have only memorized it. The Analects of Confucius was easy to memorize, but the Book of Songs was a little difficult for Feng Yi. It was said that the art of war would be taught next semester, and Feng Yi was more interested in that. The scholar was speechless. Boast. Keep boasting. Brats nowadays did not even follow the basic rules when they boasted. How could a brat's parent not know? Did he really think that he had a genius son? Since that is the case, let me test you. The scholar felt that bragging kids needed to be taught a lesson, or else what if they became second nature to lying in the future? Dear brother, please give me some pointers. Feng Yi raised his hand to signal the other students to continue reading, while he faced the challenge in front of him calmly. Sage Confucius had a student named Bo Shang, and his courtesy name was Zixia. He once said, parents, monarch, friend, which one do you know? Feng Yi said without hesitation, when it comes to parents, one can do one's best. When it comes to monarch, one can do one's best. When it comes to friends, one must keep one's word. The scholar did not expect Feng Yi to be able to answer and he made things difficult for him. When it comes to friends, one must keep one's word. What do you mean by this? When it comes to friends, one must be honest and sincere and scrupulously keep one's word. The scholar was speechless. His original intention was to use this to mock Feng Yi for boasting at such a young age, but now he felt a little embarrassed. The scholar did not believe him and he asked again. The disciple that Sage Confucius was most proud of was called Yanzi, and his courtesy name was Xin. Sage Confucius repeatedly praised him, saying that he was studious, benevolent, and even said that he had 4 virtues. Do you know which 4 virtues it is? What is Yan Hui's lifelong desire? The 4 virtues of a gentleman are strong in doing righteousness, weak in accepting advice, fearful of salary, and cautious in governing oneself. Teacher, please mark this passage as firm when doing righteousness, gentle when accepting advice, cautious when getting an official salary, and cautious when cultivating oneself. Feng Yi continued, as for what Sage Yanzi's lifelong desire, this kid boldly thinks that it is definitely a prosperous age where the monarch and his subjects are united, people live in harmony, people of all ages are healthy, and the world is peaceful. The scholar began to pay attention now, and those who were paying attention to the commotion here were also attracted over. The scholar continued to ask, why do you say so? Chapter 923. There was no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. As a scholar who was well-read, it was a great shame that he could not defeat a young child. The scholar rolled his eyes. He still wanted to test Feng Yi. However, he did not want to test the Analects of Confucius, but the Book of Songs. The Analects of Confucius recorded the words and deeds of Sage Kong and his disciples. It was one of the most classic works of Confucianism, but it was not long. Most of it was quotations and dialogues, so it was not too difficult to memorize. The Book of Songs was different. Not to mention the length, just the jerky content was very difficult to memorize. Only when one was slightly older and knew more things would it be easier to learn. The little child in front of him was only at the age of young. He could not possibly remember all the rare words and content in the Book of Songs, right? I won't test you too hard. Just memorize curly ear. Before Feng Yi could speak, Chongqing, who was at the side, quickly raised her hand. Chongqing can also recite this poem. You can recite it? The scholar was surprised and turned to look at the chubby Chongqing, then recite it once. Don't be fooled by the short length of curly ears, it had many uncommon words. Chongqing wanted to recite while shaking her head, but Feng Yi held her cheeks with both hands. Sit up straight and shake your head. It's a loss of etiquette. Chongqing maintained this posture and recited the entire rolling ears, as if she was pouring beans. Picking and rolling ears, not filling the basket in an instant. Sai, I carry the person Zhou Xian. Jichui Wei, I carry the horse and horse. I drink from the golden basket so that I won't forget forever. The scholar's eyes widened when he heard it. He did not expect a 3- or 4-year-old girl to be able to recite the entire curly ear. Although she was not fluent, every word was enunciated clearly. Was the girl in front of him a demon? Then do you know what this curly ear is about? As soon as the scholar's voice fell, Feng Yi's eyes became sharp and she glared at him. The first chapter of Curly Ear was about a woman collecting curly ears and thinking of her husband who was far away. Then she expressed her longing in the tone of a hard-working man. Although Curly Ear had a deeper meaning on the surface, it was not suitable for children to understand. Chongqing did not know this. She said happily, Chongqing knows. It's about a young lady who picks mushrooms. After the scholar asked, he regretted it. When he heard Chongqing's answer, he almost burst out laughing. A little girl picking mushrooms. This answer was also unique. Feng Yi said, my dear friend, please be careful with your words. Chongqing is young and ignorant, but you are no longer a 3-year-old child. The scholar's face turned red. He also knew that he was wrong just now. After being shocked by Feng Yi and Chongqing one after another, he already believed that this group of radishes in front of him could really read. I remember that all of you are students of the Golden Scale Academy, right? The outside world was clear about the background of the students of the Golden Scale Academy. Nominally, they were the orphans of heroes, but to put it bluntly, they were the children of poor people. How could a child from such a family have any foundation? The Golden Scale Academy was established only a few days earlier than the Golden Scale Pavilion. In other words, these kids who had no foundation had only learned to read and write for less than a year. In such a short period of time, they were already able to stop reading Great Xia Rhyme? What was the purpose of Golden Scale Academy? The scholar asked a question that everyone else was curious about. What do you learn from your teachers in the academy on normal days? Feng Yi said one by one respectfully. Apart from the 300,000 at the beginning, they also had to learn arithmetic. Before learning arithmetic, they had to memorize the 9-9 arithmetic formula. The teachers told them that after learning the basics, they had to come into contact with the classics and historical collections. Apart from that, according to their different talents, they had to learn the 4 arts, chess, calligraphy, and so on. Wait, what is 300,000 ? 3-character classic, 100 family names, 1,000-character classic. The scholar's expression became strange. The Golden Scale Pavilion also had these 3 sets of books, and he had read them when he was bored. He had to admit that if it was used to teach young children, it was indeed an excellent book. However, why didn't they learn Great Xia Rhyme? The scholar asked this question. Feng Yi said, the teachers don't teach Great Xia Rhyme, they teach Chinese New Rhyme. Chinese New Rhyme, what was this? Everyone was suspicious. They had never heard of this thing. Feng Yi took out her class notebook, which was cut out of bamboo paper, which made the others envious. Some of them were so poor that they couldn't even afford a brush, ink, and bamboo slips. The little boy used expensive bamboo paper to make drafts and notes. The scholar took over Feng Yi's notebook and found that this boy's handwriting was very good. Every word was upright and had a strong style. The strange thing was, apart from the words he was familiar with, there was a string of strange symbols near some rare words. Look at the last page. Feng Yi reminded. That person raised his hand and turned to the last page and found that there were dozens of symbols on the page, which were exactly the symbols he had just seen. This is the rhyme symbol of Chinese New Rhyme. The teachers teach us to use these symbols to spell out the pronunciation of unfamiliar words. The scholar was confused. Even though he had been in the Golden Scale Pavilion for half a year, he had never seen Chinese New Rhyme, nor had he seen these symbols. What kind of scribbles are these? Chongqing said in surprise. You don't understand. But didn't the teacher say that everyone has to learn it? The scholar's cheeks turned red. He really hadn't learned it before. He secretly glanced at the children present and found that they were all using the so-called rhyme symbol to mark the pronunciation. They obviously didn't know the word, but when they asked Feng Yi and Feng Yi drew the rhyme symbol for them, they could pronounce it correctly. Suddenly the scholar was curious. What exactly was this rhyme symbol of Chinese New Rhyme? Not only that, he also heard a conversation between a few little boys. They were talking about Feng Tian's math problems in 9 chapters of arithmetic. He stretched his neck to take a look and found that there was a piece of paper on the table of these few children. There were 10 math problems listed on the paper. They were the problems in 9 chapters of arithmetic. The scholar saw that the children were frowning and thinking hard. He found it funny and decided to help them. Who knew that after the children finished calculating 10 problems, he could only calculate the second one. He thought that the children were calculating blindly, so he was unconvinced and proofread the answers with the other party. They were exactly the same. The scholar was speechless. Could it be that he had been cheated? That the students of the Golden Scale Academy were actually not ordinary people, and that each of them had received enlightenment education? This group of little boys in blue and white clothes were too eye-catching. They could always attract curious students to come and join in the fun. Everyone that came was startled. After half a day, the students who were permanently stationed in the Golden Scale Pavilion knew that the little boys from the neighboring academy were not simple. As for the Chinese New Rhyme that the children were talking about, they were even more shocked. The children were young, so others would have lower expectations of them. If it was someone of the same age who came to the Golden Scale Pavilion to promote, he would have been besieged by a group of scholars and had to fight with them one after another. If it was this group of children with an average age of 6, not only would they not fight, but they would also put the children at the level of child prodigies. Chapter 924. I thought my lord was fooling around. I didn't expect it to be so effective. Zhou Xian sighed. He thought that the implementation of new rhymes of Chinese would cause a lot of controversy. However, the students from the Golden Scale Academy went to challenge the Golden Scale Pavilion and used the practical effect to suppress the arrogant students. After the actual implementation, the effect was much better than expected. If new rhymes of Chinese can be implemented, many people in the world will benefit from it. Ching smiled and stroked his beard. He also heard about the performance of the students from the Golden Scale Academy. As a teacher, he was proud of himself. Yes. Zhou Xian laughed heartily and swept away the haze. He escaped from Zhongzhou to Dongqing with Xiaqian and settled down in Wanzhou. At first he was at a loss. Now he found a new goal in life and lived a fulfilling life. Although he was middle-aged, his spirit was abnormally high and did not lose to young people. The two of them joked. Ching noticed that Master Yuanjing was silent and frowned as if he had encountered a problem. Master Yuanjing, what's bothering you? Zhou Xian asked with concern. Feng Ren, who heard the noise, put down the book in his hand and looked up at Master Yuanjing. Master Yuanjing came back to his senses and forced a smile. I suddenly thought of something. Feng Ren asked, what is it? It was not a simple thing to make Master Yuanjing look worried. Yuanjing said, yesterday my student Tang Zuda came to ask me about something. Thinking about it, what he said made sense. New rhymes of Chinese uses rhyme marks to mark pronunciations. It is simple and easy to learn, but Zuda is worried about one thing. If all the people in the world learn simple rhyme marks and replace the existing characters with rhyme marks, I'm afraid that no one will be willing to learn Chinese. Tang Yao was not the only one who was confused about this. Many students from the Golden Scale Pavilion also questioned it. They had to admit that this question was very tricky. Everyone froze on the spot. They agreed with the rhyme marks in new rhymes of Chinese because these rhyme marks could help people read and recognize characters. But if the people were only willing to learn simple rhyme marks and gave up learning the more difficult Chinese characters, what should they do? Qing Qing and the others pondered for a while. Zhou Xian seemed to have thought of something and his brows relaxed. I don't think it's possible. Zhou Xian smiled and said, Chinese characters are broad and profound. It's a cultural treasure and an unparalleled wealth. There are many Chinese characters with the same sound but different characters with different meanings. How can a few rhymes replace them perfectly? When Master Yuanjing heard this, he was suddenly enlightened. He patted his forehead and laughed at himself. I'm old and my brain is useless. If not for Changzhai's guidance, I'm afraid that I would have continued to be stuck in a dead end. Everyone was talking and laughing and the atmosphere became peaceful again. Zhou Xian wrote a long poem before the doubts of the outside world grew stronger. The content of the long poem used Mr. Yuanjing's doubts as an entry point. The moment it started, it caught everyone's attention. What kind of question was it that even Master Yuanjing, who was an expert in the field of education, was puzzled? As he continued to read, the entire long poem flowed smoothly like the clouds and flowing water. Reading it to one's heart's content, and in the end he still felt like he hadn't had enough. However, it also perfectly dispelled the doubts of the scholars. They happily studied the newly published New Rhymes of Chinese by Wanzhou Bookstore. When the students of the Golden Scale Pavilion all recognized New Rhymes of Chinese, Wanzhou Bookstore printed more copies and sent it to the hands of the world's famous scholars through various channels. It was for no other reason than to show off. Although this method was very shameless, it did indeed attract more scholars and famous scholars to Wanzhou. When the other feudal vassals realized the signs, the situation was already out of control. They slapped their thighs. Oh no, all the talents have gone to Wanzhou. Although they're only going there to study, there's no guarantee that they won't be recruited. The talents they've chosen are all leftovers from Wanzhou. They're inferior. How are they going to fight Lu Shi of Wanzhou? Beat him with their heads? Or influence him with love? Because of this, rumors of the feudal vassals being courteous to the wise came out one after another. For example, they would meet someone cordially today, sleep with someone tomorrow, or talk all night with someone else the day after. It was quite coquettish just to attract the little bees called talents. Regarding this, the feudal vassals also expressed their heartache. Lu Shi, at least take it easy and leave a bite of the cake. Because of the Golden Scale Pavilion and Wanzhou Bookstore, Jiang Pingji's lack of talents had finally been alleviated. The territory under her rule was developing in a direction of prosperity and entering a virtuous cycle. The territory under Jiang Pingji's rule had been recuperating for 2 years. The granary was plentiful, the army was strong, and the horses were healthy. On the other hand, most of the other feudal vassals had just settled the war and had yet to recover. For example, Huang Song. Huang Song had conquered the entire territory of Haozhou. Now he was facing the same predicament as Jiang Pingji, a lack of middle-level talents. For this reason, he personally went to Langyue County and Ningning County. There was an ancient saying, Hejian County attracts all the beauties in the world, and Longhuan County gathers the literary songs of the human world. Langyue County and Ningning County had been cradles for the export of talents since ancient times. They were the places with the strongest literary atmosphere. Huang Song had many talents under his command. Almost everyone had friends in these two places. With this layer of connection, even if the celebrities didn't think highly of Huang Song, they could still meet him for the sake of his friend. As for whether or not Huang Song could move them, it would depend on his personal performance. After one round, Huang Song managed to get close to many good seedlings. Because Master Yuanjing had gone to Wanzhou, Langyue Academy seemed a little quiet. As Master Yuanjing's first disciple, Qing Jing finally returned to Langyue County. Naturally, he had to visit his mistress. Master Yuanjing's mistress shook her head at Qing Jing. Your master is the same. He said he would be back in 3 to 5 months, but now he refuses to come back. If he wasn't old, I would suspect that he has been seduced by some stunning beauty. Recently, he hasn't even written home letters. Qing Jing was secretly amused as he listened quietly. If it weren't for Wunyang and Qingyun's filial piety, I would have brought people to Wanzhou to see who has seduced your master and refuses to leave. When Qing Jing heard the word Qian, he remembered that he was his junior sister's husband. Nyesen's courtesy name was Qian. Qing Jing knew very well what his master's taste was like. A son-in-law who could satisfy him must be a dragon among men. Qing Jing pondered for a while and prepared to write a visiting card to meet this brother-in-law. In terms of appearance, Nie Sun was one of the few handsome men in the world. Especially the cinnabar dot between his eyebrows. It was bright red and dazzling, making his skin whiter than snow. He was even more beautiful than a married woman. He felt that Wunyang would be under great pressure facing such a husband. It was fine that he was beautiful, but he was also talented and had a firm character. He could be considered a gentleman. Huang Song glanced at him and whispered to Qing Jing in private. Yumo, do you think it's possible that this Nya Qingyun? Qing Jing said, we can try. Chapter 925. When Master Yuanjing received his wife's letter and learned that his son-in-law had been abducted by Huang Song, his heart skipped a beat. Tang Yao saw his teacher's expression and thought that something had happened in Xianxia. He asked with concern, but Master Yuanjing waved his hand. Although he said that he was fine, he could not hide his worried expression. After another month, Wei Ci, who was far away in Shangjing, received the news that Nie Sun had returned to Huang Song's camp. At the same time, he received a private letter from his teacher, Master Yuanjing. Wei Ci read the letter quickly and flipped it over. A person's birth date was written on the back. The birth date was Nie Sun's. He used the person's birth date to make a divination. Wei Ci made a copy of the divinatory signs and the contents of his divination and sent someone to deliver it to Yuanjing. Master Yuanjing received the secret letter and quickly opened it. After a while he could only sigh. What a sin! Everyone knew that Nie Sun left Zhongzhao's Nie family to study in Xianxia to find his roots. Nie Sun had been abducted and sold when he was a baby. After passing through the hands of several human traffickers, he ended up in Zhongzhao. He did not know where he came from or who his birth parents were. He also did not know if he was abandoned or if he was forced to separate from his birth parents. Nie Sun followed the clues of the human traffickers who had abducted him and traveled all the way, but the clues ended at the border of Dongqing. He heard that Master Yuanjing's divination was very accurate, so he went to Xianxia County with the mentality of giving it a try. Master Yuanjing did a divination for him, and it showed that Nie Sun would meet his blood relatives in a few years. It seemed like a good divination, but it was actually a bad one. The divination showed that Nie Sun and his family would be killed. Either Nie Sun would die, or his family would die in Nie Sun's hands. Master Yuanjing asked Wei Ci to do a divination so that he could find out who Nie Sun's family member was. Wei Ci did the divination a few times and the conclusion was the same. The divination showed Qian, which meant that the person who killed or was killed by Nie Sun would be Nie Sun's biological father. If Nie Sun had been a famous scholar, the possibility of him going against his biological father would be very low. He could even avoid the bad reputation of killing his own father. But now he was instigated by Huang Song to become an official. He would inevitably follow Huang Song to war in the future. Who knew when he would kill his own father with his own hands? It was fine if this news was kept a secret for a lifetime, but if it was accidentally leaked, Nie Sun's reputation would be ruined. That was why Master Yuanjing said that it was an ill-fated relationship. Qingzong 2nd year June. Jiang Pingji was 19. Sister. Sis, wait for little brother. Lu Zhao rode on the maroon horse. He grabbed the reins in a panic and tried to catch up with Jiang Pingji. As it turned out, he really did not have the talent to ride a horse. Even after learning horsemanship for 2 years, he was still stuck at the level where he could only rely on the reins. Right at this moment, the maroon horse he was riding missed its footing and fell forward. Lu Zhao's heart was beating rapidly due to the sudden incident. He had no time to defend himself and could only close his eyes, hoping that he wouldn't fall and become a cripple. Yeah, the pain he expected didn't come. Instead, he felt his waist tighten and his falling motion came to an abrupt halt. He was forcefully carried onto the horse. Sister. Lu Zhao opened his eyes and sat diagonally on the horse's back, looking like he was still in a state of shock. Jiang Pingji's expression turned solemn. She flipped over and got off the horse. Lu Zhao, who had just escaped, also climbed off the horse's back shakily. This horse, it's probably crippled. The horse's hoof is completely broken. Jiang Pingji squatted down. The maroon horse's large, moist eyes were wide open. Its body was twitching because of the severe pain. Lu Zhao went forward to take a closer look and found that the front hoof of the maroon horse was indeed bent at a twisted angle. It was quickly bleeding and swollen. Who on earth dug such a hole here? Lu Zhao's heart ached so much that he wanted to cry. He had pestered Jiang Pingji for a long time to get this maroon horse. For this he had even agreed to many unfair terms. He had to practice hard for more than 2 months before he could barely reach the standard of the other party. He had put in so much effort to get such a good horse, but it was crippled by the hole in the ground after only a few days of riding. Jiang Pingji's expression turned solemn. She asked the guards to send the maroon horse back to the stable to see if it could be treated. This is not a hole dug by someone. Lu Zhao's expression became even more dejected. If it was not man-made, then it was naturally formed. Was his horse unlucky enough to step on it and break its hoof? Have you heard of the saying that a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows? Jiang Pingji asked Lu Zhao. Sister, although I'm a little ignorant and incompetent, it's not to the extent that I don't even know that a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Lu Zhao swung the jade tassels hanging on his waist. Wait, sister, do you mean that this hole is not man-made? It was dug by a wild rabbit? It should be. Ask the people to stop racing horses nearby. Check how many rabbit burrows there are. Lu Zhao said, today I want to have an all-rabbit feast. I want to eat all these beasts that dig holes randomly. His heart bled at the thought of his beloved horse. Jiang Pingji's lips curled into a slight smile. She said, okay, I'll deduct Zixiao's salary and prepare an all-rabbit feast for you. Lu Zhao did not understand. What did wanting to have an all-rabbit feast have to do with deducting Wei Xi's salary? It was June now. The pasture was abundant. Wild rabbits were hopping around everywhere. After searching carefully, even Lu Zhao, who was a loser in archery, accidentally shot one. 200 guards went to catch them together. In less than an hour they caught more than 50 wild rabbits. Lu Zhao muttered. He said, even if I eat until my stomach explodes, I won't be able to finish so many. Jiang Pingji ordered the people to roast the wild rabbits. She and Lu Zhao kept 5 and distributed the rest. There are so many wild rabbits in the grasslands at the border of Chongzhou. There should be more in the northern borderline. Jiang Pingji chewed on a rabbit leg and looked in the direction of the northern borderline. She smiled and squinted her eyes. Of course, the rich pasture is all in the northern borderline. It's more attractive to these little brats. Lu Zhao was still dressed like a rich young master. Even when eating rabbit meat he had to take out the exquisite silverware that he brought along with him. The plate he used was even made of transparent jade. Lu Xi had scolded him for being extravagant more than once. He was glad that he had a sister to protect him. His life was very comfortable. Is that so? Jiang Pingji smiled meaningfully. Lu Zhao shook his hands and used a knife to cut a few pieces of rabbit meat. He smeared seasoning on them evenly and skewered them to roast. The aroma filled the air. Sister, rabbit meat to show my respect to you. I didn't dote on you for nothing. After eating the roasted rabbit, Jiang Pingji and the others returned to the military camp. After 3 to 4 years of development, the northern borderline gradually recovered from the blow of the horse plague. The major horse farms also began to produce war horses. In less than 3 years, they would have the capital to command the Central Plains. Jiang Pingji wanted to take advantage of the golden opportunity before the northern borderline could catch its breath. She wanted to be the first to crush them on the grasslands. Dongqing was already divided. Each feudal lord had their own army. It was not that the northern borderline did not have the power to dominate the Central Plains. However, as long as Jiang Pingji was around, they could only dream. Chapter 926. Greetings, my lord. Feng Zhen and Qiguan Rang arrived one after the other and took their seats. No need for formalities. I called you here for one thing, Jiang Pingji said. Previously, I suggested preparing for the northern borderline. Now that we've rested enough, I'm preparing to make a move next spring. But I still need to hear your opinions on this matter. Both of them were stunned. They were not mentally prepared at all. Following a lord who could do whatever she wanted, they could enjoy a different kind of stimulation every moment. Qiguan Rang asked, what news did my lord receive? If there was no external stimulation, his lord wouldn't go crazy with people at every turn. Jiang Pingji frowned as she recounted the day's experience. They stationed troops in Xianxia County. Although it was at the border of the grasslands, There were already many traces of wild rabbits. One could imagine what the situation would be like in the northern borderline, where the grass was more plentiful. Her intuition told her that next year was the best time to make a move. If they fought quickly, they could turn around and join the warlords in the Central Plains after a short rest. Then they could take advantage of the situation. If they missed this opportunity, it would be hard to say. However, fighting a war required accurate intelligence and credible plans. It could not rely on her intuition alone. Qiguan Rang and Feng Zhen looked at each other. They also knew about the rabbit and sheep strategy that Wei Xi had implemented in the past. Now there were even traces of wild rabbits at the border. One could imagine that their strategy was effective. However, they still had to carefully consider whether it was suitable to start a war. Qiguan Rang stepped forward and bowed. He said, "My lord, in my opinion, it is better to be cautious. We can first send people to investigate the situation in the northern borderline. If the situation is suitable, then we can take stock of rations and troops. We can mobilize troops to guard the border of Chongzhou. We can strengthen the training of the troops and be ready for battle." There were many things to prepare for war. Not only did they have to understand the enemy's intelligence, but they also had to ensure their own supply lines. Fortunately, they had decided to station a large number of fields in Chongzhou and selected a few fields with strategic significance. When the autumn grain harvest came, it would be the third year of stationing fields in Chongzhou. The rations would be enough to support this large-scale war. The existence of the fields would not only reduce the loss of grain, but they could also provide support flexibly. They would not have to worry about the enemy interfering with the grain transportation route. Feng Zhen seconded the motion. Jiang Pingji said, "I know this too. I'm just informing you." Qiguan Rang and the other two secretly heaved a sigh of relief. As long as their lord did not go crazy and attack the north borderline tomorrow, everything would be fine. In the entire Chongzhou, no one was more familiar with the situation in the northern borderline than the Cui family. Jiang Pingji sent someone to invite Cui Yu, the head of the Cui family. She spent so much effort to rope in the Cui family, not only to use the Cui family to contend against the other aristocratic families of Chongzhou, but also because of their connections. Ever since Gu Xin followed Jiang Pingji's instructions and used a bunch of glass products to swindle a sum of money from the north borderline, he withdrew his business from the north borderline. This also meant that Jiang Pingji had lost an informer targeting the north borderline. Fortunately, the appearance of the Cui clan made up for this regret. Ever since Cui Yu boarded Jiang Pingji's boat, the Cui family's status in Chongzhou rose with the tide. In the past 2 years, the Cui family had not only made a lot of money by producing rice paper, but also won an unprecedented reputation and status. The whole clan wished they could worship Jiang Pingji as the god of wealth. In order to express his determination, Cui Yu even took the initiative to ask for a position that didn't involve any real power or suspicion. "Greetings, my lord." Cui Yu bowed, then nodded slightly to Qiguan Rang and Feng Zhen. He was only willing to take a seat after the proper etiquette. Jiang Pingji asked, "Zhonghuan, I didn't summon you for anything else. I have something to ask you." Cui Yu said respectfully, "My lord, please ask. I will tell you everything I know." "Your Cui family has been managing the north borderline business. Have you noticed anything unusual in the past 6 months? If it were someone else, they would definitely not be able to stand the Cui family doing business in Chongzhou and earning money from the north borderline. They were like grass on the wall." Cui Yu initially wanted to give up the business in the north borderline. Compared to the rice paper business and the secret recipe for making rice paper that Jiang Pingji had given him, the profits from the north borderline business were more like chicken ribs. Rather than keep it and arouse Jiang Pingji's suspicions, it was better to give it up. Jiang Pingji stepped in to stop it and even secretly supported the Cui family to develop the business in the north borderline. Cui was a smart man. He immediately came to his senses and put more effort into managing the business in the north borderline in the past 2 years. "Something unusual?" Cui Yu thought for a moment and said in shame, "What are you referring to?" "The war horses produced by the Northern Kingdom's horse farm, the living conditions of ordinary herdsmen, the changes in the Northern Kingdom's court officials. That's about it." Jiang Pingji circled the area so it was much easier for Cui Yu to answer. Because of the horse plague, there is not a single horse farm left in the north. However, production had been restored in the past 2 years. It was said that the largest farm had more than 700 new foals this year. The bloodline of the breed can't compare to those bred before, but it's still a rare breed. Cui Yu continued, the ordinary herdsmen are still the same. Their previous losses were too heavy and they haven't recovered yet. As for the changes in the northern borderline's court, perhaps because of his paranoia, the king of the northern borderline no longer trusts the wise Wu Liba. I heard that the king of the northern borderline's health is showing signs of decline. A few of the adult princes are already involved in political affairs, and there are faint signs of a fight for the throne. Many of the court officials have chosen to side with him, openly or secretly. Jiang Pingji knitted her brows tightly after she heard that. More than 700? So many? Jiang Pingji was shocked when she heard the number. It takes at least 3 years for a foal to reach adulthood. How long had it been since the horse plague in the northern borderline? The number of 700 was only the output of the largest farm. Including other farms of various sizes, the number of foals produced was at least 2,000. Where did they get so many maras that were of the right age to give birth? Cui Yu's expression was slightly solemn. He lowered his voice and said, My lord, I'm afraid we have to ask the Mengs in Zhangzhou about this. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Pingji raised her hand and smashed the table in front of her. Meng Zhan, that old bastard. One day I'll dig up his ancestral grave. Isn't he afraid of going down in history? Almost all the horse farms in Dongqing were in Zhangzhou. In other words, the Mengs controlled the life and death of the horse farms in Dongqing. Without the Mengs' permission, how could so many pregnant maras be sent to the northern borderline? Cui Yu secretly wiped his sweat and continued. The northern borderline paid 10 times the price to buy the horses from the Mengs. That's why, animals that have forgotten their ancestors. Jiang Pingji sneered. The Mengs were the descendants of the war god of the previous dynasty, Mengjing. The 3 tribes of the northern borderline were the descendants of the Qiangu tribe. Mengjing had contributed a lot to the massacre of the Qiangu tribe. She really didn't know how the 2 forces could be so thick-skinned as to cooperate. Jiang Pingji was angry. The audience in the streaming room was also shocked by her sudden outburst. After 2 to 3 years of practice, she gradually changed the inherent impression of the streaming room in the eyes of the audience in the blue bullet screen. Now the ratio of red to blue in the streaming room was no longer 19:1. It was infinitely close to 1:1. The audience from the 2 sides sometimes had friendly exchanges, and sometimes it was a tragic quarrel. The red side said that the blue side had despised the streaming room for many years. Why didn't they quit the streaming room completely? Why were they competing with them? Chapter 927. Banyuan, sigh, the streamer is going crazy. I haven't seen her swear before. Leisurely Xianxia, if it were me I'd be angry too. The Mengs of Zhangzhou must have a hole in their brain. For 10 times the profit, they actually sold such an important strategic resource, the maras of the right age, to a foreign tribe at the border. It was one thing to sell it, but this foreign race was going to attack the Central Plains. Kixingsu, I can understand why the host is so angry. A well-bred mare of suitable age is equivalent to a strategic resource like tank ammunition. No matter how short of money the motherland was, it would not sell it to a country that was hostile to it and constantly wanted to invade it. If the aristocrats of Chongzhou chose to collude with the nobles of the northern borderline to harm Jiang Pingji for the sake of their family's interests, then what about the Meng family of Zhangzhou? If the foreign tribes of the northern borderline were to quickly recover their strength with the help of the mare, they would mobilize their troops to the Central Plains and slaughter the Han people. The Meng family of Zhangzhou would be the greatest sinner of all time. The Meng family of Zhangzhou didn't help them, knowing that their streamer had been cultivating for several years and was pointing her sword at the northern borderline. Not only did the Meng family of Zhangzhou not help, but they also hit her when she was down. If the world was in danger, no matter how much money the Mengs collected, it would only benefit others in the end. Women in disguise. Fortunately, we discovered it early. If we discovered it 2 years later, the cavalry of the northern borderline would have recovered at least 40% of their combat power. Meet you, 21 years old. I suddenly thought of something. The 3 families of the northern borderline bought so many maras from the Meng family of Zhangzhou at 10 times the price. They must be very tight financially, right? The streamer plans to attack the northern borderline next spring. The 3 tribes of the northern borderline have no time to profit. In other words, the northern borderline is in a very awkward situation. If the host wins, Tisk Tsk will be a huge profit. Thorns bloom. I was just about to say this. If the northern borderline is attacked, they will probably be stunned. Was it a pleasant surprise? Was it a surprise? Wasn't it exciting? The benefits brought by the Maras would take time to show. Jiang Pingji did not intend to give them another 3 years to recuperate. Yi Wu Yanling, we can't be too optimistic. The northern borderline is vast and powerful. Their strength lay not only in their cavalry, but also in their ability to fight on horseback. The host has more than 100,000 troops under her command, and they are elite soldiers who have been carefully trained for 2 to 3 years. It may seem like a lot, but it is impossible for all of them to be deployed on the battlefield. She also needed to leave some people behind to protect the territory under her rule, in case someone took advantage of the situation to invade. In other words, only 70 to 80,000 soldiers could be sent to the battlefield. Don't you think it's too strenuous for 70 to 80,000 people to fight against the northern borderline? The northern borderline could even beat up the whole of Dongqing, let alone Jiang Pingji, who currently occupied less than 1/3 of Dongqing's territory. Zhaoren, our ancestor Sun Tzu's art of war said it well. Victory is the most important thing in war, not the long duration. If the long duration lasts, the soldiers will be blunt. If the city is besieged, the soldiers will lose their strength. If they lose their strength, the goods will be exhausted. If the host is dragged into the mire of a tug-of-war by the northern borderline, her chances of further development will be very slim. Will the feudal vassals around her turn a blind eye? At that time, not only would she have to face the suppression of the northern borderline's heavy troops, but she would also have to worry about the stirring feudal vassal forces behind her. The larger the war, the more important it was to end it as quickly as possible. With every day that passed, the risks they faced would increase. Even a big country could not withstand a prolonged tug-of-war, let alone a small vassal like Jiang Pingji. Fortunately, the northern borderline thought they were smart and made a stupid move. They greatly underestimated Jiang Pingji's strength and ambition. If it had been other feudal vassals, they might not have dared to take the initiative to stroke the tiger's whiskers in the northern frontier, much less 3 years. The northern borderline could take advantage of the gap of a few years to recover its vitality as soon as possible and recover the investment it had invested. After taking a breather, they could regain their arrogance. However, this was Jiang Pingji. She started plotting against the people of the northern borderline at the age of 12. Would she watch such a good opportunity slip away from her eyes? Now it was time to consider pulling in the net. Jiang Pingji said with a serious expression, "This matter is very important. The secret must not be leaked, and the northern borderline will find out in advance." It was not that she did not trust the people present, but the ancient people's awareness of military secrets was too poor. In the history of the previous dynasty, how many coups had failed because of the leak of secrets? Returning to her own tent, Jiang Pingji wrote a secret letter and sent it to Shangjing at an urgent speed. While waiting for Wei Xi's news, she began to make preparations. Cui Yu followed Jiang Pingji's orders and increased the number of merchants heading to the northern borderline. It was not until a few horse farms faced the same problem that they came to their senses and hurriedly reported the problem to their superiors. The wise man of this generation in the northern borderline was Wu Liba. As a key figure, many matters had to go through his hands. After screening, the important reports would be sent to the king of the northern borderline. Why are there so many rabbit holes in the horse farms? Wu Liba keenly noticed the abnormality. He did not submit the reports to the king of the northern borderline. Instead, he personally went to each horse farm to carefully understand the situation. After asking, he only had one thought in his mind. Chapter 928. Wu Liba had a bad premonition. Were there so many rabbit holes in the pasture in previous years? Wu Liba summoned the owner of the stud farm and inquired about the situation. The horse farm owner shook his head. Although rabbit holes have appeared in the past, there weren't many of them, and they weren't as densely packed as they are now. The uneasiness in Wu Liba's heart intensified. Something was not right. Something must have gone wrong somewhere. Although he was a man born in the grasslands, he had lived a good life since he was a child. He rarely came into contact with the lower-class herdsmen and didn't even have a deep understanding of the situation in the grasslands. This was because he was a wise man of the northern borderline's foreign tribes. He had learned the Han culture of the Central Plains and used the essence of Han culture to help the northern borderline prosper. All these years, in order to help the northern borderline recover from the horse plague, Wu Liba did not have the heart to focus on anything else. Moreover, the king of the northern borderline was getting older, and the princes under him were getting more and more mature. The fight for the throne was about to surface. With two hidden dangers added together, how could Wu Liba have the energy to care about the lives of the lowly herdsmen? If it wasn't for the fact that the number of rabbit holes had increased greatly, causing the horses in the farm to be crippled, he wouldn't have investigated to the end. When his subordinates placed the information they had found in front of him, Wu Liba was so angry that he slammed his palm on the table, his expression ferocious. Who allowed these fools to act smart and raise wild rabbits? Wu Liba was exasperated. The guard was startled, and then he lowered his head to conceal the rage that surged in his eyes. If the imperial court had not made a mistake in its policy and bought the Fergana horses from Shalon, causing the entire northern borderline to be infected with the horse plague, would the low-level herdsmen be so poor that they had no money to buy rice? If they didn't rear these rabbits, who knew how many families would be forced to sell themselves as slaves? However, the guard did not dare to say this. He had been by Wu Liba's side for a few years and knew his temperament very well. Master, do you know how the herdsmen lived in the past few years? The guard reminded him carefully. Wu Liba's expression froze. Of course he knew. He was even indirectly related to the current situation. In order to cultivate more war horses, the royal court of the northern borderline promised the herdsman families benefits by selling them foals. Then the government would buy them back at a high price. Because of this policy, the northern borderline was able to develop in a short period of more than 10 years. It even threatened Dongqing so much that they dared not act presumptuously. This suggestion was made by Wu Liba. It was because of it that he managed to secure his position as the wise one and gain the king's trust. This was true for success and also true for failure. The herdsmen's families had invested all their resources in the war horses and had no other source of income. The northern border horse plague broke out, and the imperial dynasty wasn't willing to make up for their losses, causing many families to die. Even if Wu Liba did not care about the lives of the commoners at the bottom of society, he could predict the consequences. Wu Liba said angrily, "Even so, they shouldn't have done this." The guard had a strange expression. If the herdsman did not rear rabbits in exchange for food, what else could they do? Could it be that he didn't want to eat food and instead lay on the ground to eat withered grass? Rabbits had a short birth cycle and were easy to raise. Ordinary herdsmen's families relied on them to survive the hungriest times. If the royal court of the northern borderline was willing to take pity on the herdsmen and compensate them for their losses, they would not have to rear rabbits. The herdsmen had lived on the grassland for generations, so they knew how annoying it was for rabbits to dig holes. However, for the sake of their family, they had to do so. The guard wisely chose to remain silent. Wu Liba said, "Continue investigating. I don't believe that the Central Plains is so lacking in rabbit meat and rabbit fur. This is clearly a conspiracy against our Beijiang, and we must capture the culprit." The guard obeyed the order and went to investigate. He would not have known if he did not investigate, but after investigating a little, Wu Liba watched with trepidation. Almost every month, there would be caravans from different places purchasing smoked rabbit meat and tanned rabbit skin from the Beijiang herdsmen. The amount each time was not large, but when added up, it was an astronomical figure. Apart from that, they also purchased wool and mutton. Compared to selling mutton, the herdsmen preferred to increase the size of their flocks and sell their wool. The herdsmen did some calculations. As long as the sheep were alive, they could continue to sell their wool and the profits would flow steadily. If they slaughtered the sheep, it would be a one-off transaction and it would not be worth it. Selling wool was more profitable than selling rabbits. Almost every family reared sheep of varying sizes, and the number of sheep increased exponentially. The Beijiang herdsmen also had the habit of rearing sheep, so Wu Liba was not sure if this was a conspiracy. After thinking about it, he brought a group of guards to visit the herdsmen's families in secret. "Seems there's nothing wrong. Wu Liba rode on his horse and looked into the distance. The herdsmen herded their sheep, and the blue sky and green grass made everything seem so harmonious and serene. Old man, it must be tiring to watch over so many sheep. Wu Liba was dressed like an ordinary herdsman, and he did not carry any valuable items. He looked no different from an ordinary person. The old herdsman who herded the sheep chuckled. It is indeed tiring. This year the pasture is not lush and we always have to move places. The Beijiang people were nomadic people and they followed the pasture when herding. Wherever there was more pasture they would herd the animals there to eat. Wu Liba felt that something was wrong with the old herdsman's words, so he probed. With so many sheep, I wonder how much pasture they will eat. At this rate they will soon reach another pasture. The old herdsman said, that's right. They can eat too much. If we don't herd them they will be so hungry that they will pull out the grass from the mud. After Wu Liba heard this, a thought flashed through his mind and he seemed to have grasped the truth. He hurriedly asked, Old man, where did you herd the sheep previously? The old herdsman pointed casually. Wu Liba thanked him and hurriedly mounted his horse and galloped in that direction. This season was the time when the pasture was lush. From afar the entire vast grassland looked like a piece of emerald jade that had fallen to the mortal world. It was lush green and it made one feel refreshed. However, when Wu Liba arrived at the destination pointed out by the old herdsman, he realized that the pasture there was sparse. To make an analogy, it was like mild hair loss. Although the scalp was not exposed, it was obvious that the hair was not as lush as before. Wu Liba rode on his horse and muttered to himself, sheep, rabbit. The breeze on the grassland caressed the pasture, making it sway beautifully. Could it be pasture? In an instant he understood all the details and his heart tightened. Pasture was the key to rearing warhorses. The mastermind was obviously using such a roundabout method to indirectly squeeze the survival resources of warhorses. What a sinister plan. Wu Liba clenched his teeth. Fortunately he had discovered it early. Otherwise, if the enemy had continued secretly for another 7 to 8 years, the Beijiang would not be able to afford to rear warhorses. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.